behalf of All Children's Hospital with Ethan Shapiro, Patrick Crowells, David Hughes, and with us today is Corporate Representative Dr. Michelle Smith.
Thank you. I received an exhibit list. I appreciate that very much. The clerk has it too. And so my understanding is I can now move in a lot of these joint exhibits at this time. Is that correct?
That's correct, Your Honor.
Okay, the court's going to receive, without objection, the totality of exhibits 101, 102, sorry, 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004, 1005, 1006, 1007, 1008, 1009, 1010, 1011. Actually, it goes all the way through goes all the way through 1083. So the court will receive 1001 through 1083 in their totality. Okay, so what's next that you all would like to discuss?
We have some additional exhibits the court will be pleased to know we've managed to stipulate to. One is 2004-6 through 6-3. We removed pages 1 through 4 at the defendant's request.
How about page 5?
That's a good question. Is page 5? It was removed, sorry. Mine just said 4.
So at this point in time, 2004-6 through 63 may come in, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so the court receives 2004, pages 6 through 63, and I'm assuming I can also receive 2005, 2017, 2512 at this time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I'll receive 2005, 2017, and 2512.
Additionally, Your Honor, this morning we were able to reach agreement on 2006 through 2009, which are the Tashana Duncan psychological records.
So are 2006 through 2009 in their totality coming in?
I believe so. That's my understanding from Mr. Shapiro.
The reports, not the attachments.
Whatever constituted 6, 7, 8, and 9. For the record, they are 2006 is psychological evaluation of Maya Kowalski, 2007 evaluation of Beata Kowalski, 2008 evaluation of Jack Kowalski, 2009 Kyle Kowalski. So just the evaluations.
Just the report, yes, sir.
Okay. Since I don't have those documents in front of me, are there any exhibits attached to those? So, I don't want to make sure. Okay. So the court will receive 2006, 2007, 2008, and 2009 in their entirety.
We have a few additional exhibits which we can either take up now, constituting 2030 down there at the bottom, up and through 2792. Of these, the only ones that I think are pertinent to the first witness would be 2792, which are growth charts pertaining to Maya Kowalski provided by Dr. Wassenaar, and these were part of his file, although for some reason 2 items when we were going over his testimony we just had never seen before, or if we did, we didn't notice it. One is 2792, which is a growth chart pertaining to Maya Kowalski provided by Dr. Wassenaar. Can we pull that up for the court?
I'm going to.
Oh, Your Honor, we're not going to be objecting to 2792. We just need a copy.
Can you hold on one second? I'm going to turn it off and turn it back on because for whatever reason, the public galleries are not coming on. So let me try this again. Okay, so, Ms. Crowell, which one are you not objecting to?
2792, we found 2792, the growth charts.
And that's only a one-page document?
No, there's multiple pages.
So am I receiving the totality of 2792?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Okay, the court will receive the totality of 2,792.
Then, Your Honor, again, there was one other that was, if it was in there, we simply did not notice it. And I don't believe I've given the defense enough time to see if it was in their production from the doctor. But part of Dr. Wassenaar's file is trial exhibit 2375 for identification, obviously, right now. I have a copy of it for the court. We've got it up there for you. And the physical copy here, we provided to the court. The court will see that there's actually physical imprints of Maya's lips, a kiss to her parents. It is part of his medical records and was provided to him by the Kowalskis as to how Maya was doing through this.
Okay, so this one's not on the list, or
Correct.
2375?
I don't think it's on the list. It was added this morning, Judge.
Does the clerk have a copy? Okay.
Your Honor, we object to this exhibit. It's hearsay. It's clearly not a medical record.
I'm sorry, no.
We don't choose the physical exhibit unless it's on here. And the judge decides.
Is 2375 the physical paper? Is it in the possession of the clerk?
This is it right here. So, answer to now, I can provide it to the clerk right now.
Is that two-sided?
Yes, if you flip it over, the court can see the actual imprints from the.
Because if you want the clerk to put this into at least being marked,
Yes, sir.
we need a physical copy, so we're taking
That's
this
it.
one? Okay.
That's the original.
And page 1 is where it says Dear Mommy and Daddy, Mikhail. Page 2 is the balance, the other side. So this, well, let me hear the objection.
Hearsay. It's not a medical record.
Mr. Anderson?
Exception under 803. First, it's a medical record, Your Honor, and we've waived.
Is this being used for the purpose of diagnosis or treatment?
Yes, it's as to her Maya's state of mind and feelings at the time, and the inside of that obviously are also then existing mental, emotional, or physical conditions, which is 803.3, and then of course 803.4, and this was provided, I don't think by Beata. I think this was provided through Beata, or by Maya, but provided by Maya through Beata. And I believe there's an exception in hearsay for minors providing medical information.
Judge, it's not even, oh, sorry. May I speak?
Sure.
It's not written to the doctor, it's written to her family.
Here's my thought is, I think if you want this to be a medical record, you're going to have to lay a foundation through the doctor who relied on this document for purposes of medical care or treatment. Let me just. So ultimately, I have the ability to preclude the jury and then turning off the monitors in the gallery as well. So you can still publish it, or actually we have the physical paper. We can show it to the witness without the jury seeing it.
I have the doctor here. We could probably do it out of the province of the jury if you'd like to save that. It's up to you, Judge, however you want to do it.
It's your case. I'll defer to however you want to do it. But I mean, if to the extent it's something that Maya Kowalski state of mind or anything like that, I think you're going to need foundation from her to get it in. So, because right now it's hearsay without an exception.
All right. Probably what I'll do then is I can put mine on the stand right now out of the province of the jury to identify this and her reasoning for forwarding it to her family, and then the family, obviously we don't have Beata, but I think that is the purpose of 804 paren, sorry, 804 2F, statement offered, declaring unavailable. So I can put it in through Maya's foundation and then have the doctor come in and complete that.
Whatever you want to do, but I mean, this is a statement by Maya Kowalski, so I'm not sure why Beata Kowalski's unavailability has anything to do with it.
Well, she was, I believe at this time, in Johns Hopkins Hospital, and so was unable to be, obviously she couldn't get something directly to her doctor. She mailed it to her mother, who then provided it to the doctor, as I understand it.
Whatever you'd like to do.
Okay.
Are there other exhibits that are agreement or that we have to deal with before the jury comes in?
Not on behalf of the, well, let me see here.
I see a whole bunch about, I guess, Tashana Duncan, a lot of them were admitted, but there's still others. I'm assuming she's testifying today.
She is, after
We're
lunch.
objecting to the, all of the documents filled out by other people, not her reports as we've indicated, but we're objecting to 2504, 2508, 2509.
And basis on those is,
Well, they're hearsay, it's improper character evidence if you look at the contents of them. Some improper opinions, but they're essentially hearsay, Judge.
We're not putting those in through this morning, through the witness. We'd like to do that maybe at lunch or just before this afternoon. The document we would like for our first witness also is 2002. It's a third from the bottom on the court's list. It's a discharge document from Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. The reason
We don't have
it's...
any objection to that, I'm sorry.
Okay.
If I didn't indicate one way or the other, I apologize.
All right, no objection.
Okay, court receives the totality of Exhibit 2002.
one moment, Your Honor. That's mine right here. And it's in evidence physically.
You also want this?
Okay, yes, I've got that. And one other relatively minor point, but important to the Kowalski children, is we need to get some kind of note from the court so that we don't have truant officers interrupting the trial for school to say that they are participating in the trial as parties, if that's okay.
I'm sure I can do something like that, but my recollections, they're online or virtual learning. I don't know if you can time shift with that or not.
Do you need it? One moment, Your Honor, I'll ask. Apparently this has to do, the court is correct that they do remote. However, there are different projects and assignments that are due, that are lengthy, and the teachers have requested something to indicate for their filing why they can extend a number of these assignments that are important to their grades.
Any objection from the defense?
No, no.
I'll get something.
And I think that's it, Judge. I think we're ready.
Okay, so what are we doing about those exhibits that have not come in that you wanted to use this morning?
Well, I'd like to cover them, if the court is amenable, beginning at 2011.
No, he's asking.
What? We've got about 12 minutes before 9 o'clock, so whatever you want to do.
You know what, I'll do Maya now. Maya, can you take the stand? I'm just going to ask about this.
Yes, she needs to be sworn.
If you can face the clerk, raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
Go for it.
It's good practice. State your name for the record,
Maya Kowalski,
and where do you live?
Venice, Florida.
And are you one of the plaintiffs in this action?
Yes.
And was there a period of time between October 7th, 2016 and January 14th, 2017 when you were kept at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Yes.
During the course of that, did you from time to time write letters to your mother, your father, or your brother?
Yes.
Let me show you, if I may approach, Your Honor. What's been marked for identification, Trial Exhibit 2375. And ask you to identify whether you are the author of that.
Yes, I wrote the note.
And that is your handwriting?
Yes.
And so, although I don't see that it's dated, is it in any place?
It's not.
But do you recall that whether this was written during the course of your stay at Johns Hopkins?
It was written when I
And
was
can you see
staying.
that from what is written there, the descriptions?
Yes.
And in writing this, were you expressing your existing at that time mental, emotional, and physical condition?
Your Honor, I just object to the leading.
It's a minor.
I'm going to sustain the objection.
Okay. What was the purpose involving, what if any involvement does the document reflect as to your mental, emotional, or physical condition, if you can look through it there?
Well, at the time, I desperately missed my family. I wasn't allowed to really have any contact with them. So in this document, I'm expressing how much I miss them. I was extremely depressed. And in the little, as far as physical-wise how I was doing, if you look, there's a heart. And in the heart is pictured my mom on the very far right, and my brother, me in the wheelchair, and then on the very far left would be my dad. So it's showing that I'm still sick.
Were you attempting at this point to address your health while in there?
Yes, but
And
I couldn't explicitly state it.
Because what?
I couldn't explicitly state it because they wouldn't have sent the document.
Was that your intent, however?
Yes.
And did you state in there the status of your pain? I think it's in the top. Is mine, can I see that up here? Or has the judge got that shut down? I gave away all my copies.
You can put it back on the screen.
When you say not doing the best, but I'm hanging in there, what were you addressing?
I was trying to express that physically I wasn't doing very well. I was in a lot of pain with my CRPS. On top of that, I wasn't doing well mentally because, I was a kid and I was taken away from my family, so you could only imagine.
During this period of time was Dr. John Wassenaar your pediatrician?
Yes.
And through the course of your stay there, did it come to your attention that your parents from time to time would keep him updated?
I figured, I didn't know that entirely, but I could assume.
And did you trust your parents at that time, your mother or your father, to provide information to your pediatrician about your status during the period of time when you could not directly communicate?
Yes.
Your witness.
Mr. Anderson.
Do you want to verify?
I'm sorry.
Hey, good morning, Maya.
Good morning.
Just a couple quick questions. Do you know the date that this was sent?
I do not, I'm sorry.
Okay. And if I understand what you were telling the court, the purpose of this letter was to communicate with your mom, dad, and your brother?
Correct.
Okay. Do you know if Dr. Wassenaar ever came to see you at All Children's?
Sorry, can you repeat the question?
Sure, yeah. Do you know if Dr. Wassenaar, your primary care pediatrician, ever came to see you at All Children's?
I believe he did not.
Thank you for your time.
Anything further?
Anything further from the court?
No, anything?
I do not.
Okay, Ms. Kowalski, if you could go ahead and seat.
Thank you.
Any further argument on this? I guess we'll start with the defense.
Respectfully, Your Honor, the letter is self-explanatory. It's from Maya while she had a period of no contact due to DCF orders. It's written to her parents. It's not written to the doctor. It's not for the purpose of medical evaluation. I think it's self-explanatory. She wrote it because DCF precluded contact between her and her parents. So there's not a medical exception to this, and it's otherwise hearsay.
What about the state of mind exception?
It wouldn't be relevant to Dr. Wassenaar, to his testimony. I mean, this might come up again as to mine, but I don't understand why this would be relevant to an inquiry to be included within Dr. Wassenaar's records.
Well, at this point, I agree that there hasn't been enough shown for a 90.803 for purposes of medical diagnosis or treatment. It's quite possible that Dr. Wassenaar will say that he used it as such. But I do believe it would qualify and is the exception under 90.803 paren 3 than existing mental, emotional, or physical conditions. So I don't have a basis to preclude its admission. So,
Move to admit.
you want to talk to Dr. Wassenaar to see if the other basis is there as well, or?
We covered during,
I'm so sorry.
we covered during cross, Your Honor. I mean,
Okay. Okay, then I'll receive Exhibit 2375 over the defense objection. What's next?
I believe that's it. Well, no, we have 4 minutes. So there's a comprehensive med psych evaluation by Dr. Henschke. She is the psychiatrist. This is at 2011 for the record. I do not anticipate her testifying this week. So you're aware
Judge,
of
I
it.
think the issue is, we objected to pages 8 through 13. We discussed this quite some time ago with counsel. 8 through 13 is a letter written for the court and an affidavit that she did for the court. It's not part of her medical record. So we're objecting to pages 8 through 13 of the record.
Can you put 813 up real quick?
Sure.
Okay, keep scrolling. Keep going, please. Next page. 12 and 13, please. At this time, the court agrees that pages 8 through 13 of Exhibit 2011 are not admissible. So are you agreeing that the balance of 2011, except for those pages, can come in?
Your Honor,
Subject to.
we Mr. Anderson and I just had a brief discussion about this. There are certain portions of it that.
Should we approve
I think
sidebar
he
for this?
Wishes to redact. I won't say what they are, but I think it's something he and I need to talk about.
Okay, so I will not move it in. You all can figure out whatever needs to be redacted.
Right.
If we need to substitute out with the clerk.
You can mark it for identification at this point, Judge.
Well-
Before it goes in, there needs to be a substitution.
Once it gets marked for identification, then
It can't be
Can we just
substituted.
hold off on this? You
Well,
don't need it.
let's approach sidebar so I can explain to the court a little bit well.
is it something for today?
No.
Then let's not deal with it today. It sounds like the defense had a couple of issues they wanted to talk about before we brought in the jury.
Yes, Judge, we have advised counsel that we object to several of the witnesses that they have indicated they might call today, and I don't know if we want to address that now or
Which witnesses?
later. I don't know if they're calling them or not.
What was?
One is Meg Boland, and the other one is Alina Kirschner.
We're not calling either today. I don't think we're calling either this week. There's a possibility of Elena Kushner.
Today?
No.
Okay, well, they gave them as witnesses for today.
Today.
We also, they indicated they want to play the deposition of Dr. Napolitano. We object to that. We don't think he fits within the requirements of the expert exception. And also, they left in, I'm sure inadvertently, but they left in a section that was sustained. The objection was sustained.
Well, I mean, I've already ruled on the Politanos, so if I sustain the objection, it needs to be cut from the video.
We didn't notice it, we didn't review it till 7 o'clock this morning, Judge, because we didn't get
Is
into
there
it.
any indication in there?
We sent the video to them last night. We'll remove the part. We'll take another look and remove that. We're not playing that today
Oh, you're not? Okay.
unless we run short on time. So
So Judge, when we had asked who they're calling then today, because they've given us like, those three were told, and they're not calling any of them. So we would like to know who they're calling, please.
I told Mr. Shapiro and
Marie, just tell me who you're calling.
all right, we've got Dr. Wassenaar this morning, and also Ms. Brown, who was a witness to Maya there in the hospital. This afternoon, then, we have Tishana Duncan and Father Jack Costello.
Were those names provided to you?
Yes, yes, sir.
Okay. Let me ask, and I don't know if this is a Mr. Altenberg and a Mr. Elliott question. I don't see Mr. Elliott. Where are we on the instruction that we talked about on Friday?
I talked briefly to Mr. Elliott, and last night I gave you a shorter edited version of it as well. I would be happy to talk about it sometime later today. I don't think you want to do that right now, but if you're also having the hearing tomorrow morning, I'm not quite sure how long or how much you want to cover, but I was sort of anticipating that they would tell me they want Mr. Elliott to handle it, he'll be there tomorrow.
My understanding is I can give you the morning.
It's important to try to get the ruling so that so we can get an instruction to the jury that we're not the ones that took her away, if we hear more of that today. I'm not sure whether that will come up in the testimony of Ms. Duncan, for example. That's an emotional issue that is not legally correct.
Well, for Dr. Duncan's testimony, I guess we'll hear whatever it is. I can give you the morning tomorrow. My afternoon, I've already given it for another case, the Manatee case. So,
Your Honor, we filed a response to that special instruction last evening.
okay. Well, the clerk hasn't docketed it yet, so sounds like that's something we can address tomorrow morning.
Unless it becomes a big issue today, I think tomorrow morning is good after.
Anything else from the defense before we bring in the jury?
I don't believe so, Your Honor.
And anything else from the plaintiffs?
Not at this time, Your Honor.
And you saw that I ruled on the round 2 deposition designations, and so,
Well, when this comes up again, Judge, we can address that.
okay.
That particular objection was omitted in others. It should have been asserted.
It was.
I just was referring to, like, there was 10 depositions over the weekend I
Right.
ruled on.
Yeah, and I was making reference, Your Honor, to Napolitano was one of them.
I think that was the first batch. Was it Napolitano?
Could be, Judge.
Yeah. They all kind of blend together, right? After a while, all these depositions.
But
Okay. We ready to bring in the jury?
I believe so, Your Honor.
Let's bring in the jury.
Jurors entering.
Okay, welcome everybody. Please be seated. I want to confirm while you were away for this 3-day weekend, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves, you did no investigation, and you received no information. Is that all correct? Yes. Okay, did you all have a good weekend? Yes. Okay. Mr. Anderson, call your next witness, please.
Dr. John Wassenaar.
Face the clerk and raise your right hand.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
All right, we're gonna go sit.
May I please record?
You may inquire.
Please state your name for the record.
John Wassenaar.
And have you been called here as the Kowalski's family doctor?
Yes, sir.
Essentially. And so have you treated then Maya Kowalski, Kyle Kowalski, and before her passing, Beata Kowalski?
I have.
Just curiously, have you ever treated Jack Kowalski?
Not to my knowledge.
So I'd like to get the jury to know a little bit about you. You grew up in St. Petersburg, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And then attended St. Pete College and University of Florida?
Yes, sir.
And you did a mixed internship residency in pediatrics and internal medicine?
I did a dual combined residency in adult internal medicine and pediatrics.
And where
at
did you
Duke
do that?
University.
And where did you do that?
Duke University.
So these two specializations, can you tell the jury just a tiny bit about the two choices you made, pediatrics and internal medicine, what you wanted to do in your career?
Okay, so basically, the program is the same as a conventional pediatric program and an adult internal medicine program. It just combines the requirements of both programs into an accelerated training, if you will. We have to sit for the same boards as straight adult internal medicine physicians do and the same boards as straight pediatric physicians do. My original intention when I was making my way through medical school was to do pediatrics, but after an experience on an externship in the islands, I came back and Duke happened to send me a flyer on their program for internal medicine and pediatrics, and that's what I decided was for me because I enjoyed the spectrum of seeing babies up to the geriatrics. It really appealed to me.
It's gratifying. And what are the additional or different attributes, qualifications in dealing with children over adults that you have noticed? And I'm speaking of this in terms of why you chose pediatrics.
Well,
If
I was
that's a bad question, let me know. I'm known to ask
a
some.
little confused. I always tell my patients and people who ask, why do you do that? I say it's the two ends, the young and the very old, that are similar. It's the people in between that are different, and so it's really not that much of a stretch. You just have to keep in mind where people are at this point in time in their growth and development.
And are you board certified in both?
Yes, sir.
And how long have you been board certified?
33 years.
And how long have you been in practice?
33 years.
So, so the jury knows, your group is called First Physicians of Sarasota? Is that
Yes,
right?
sir.
And is that part of Sarasota Memorial Hospital?
Yes, sir.
And through that, do you still do your own pediatric hospital work?
Up until 2018, we admitted to both hospitals everything from pediatrics to adult internal medicine. Now the group, our inpatient work is limited to newborns.
How many years did you spend practicing in hospitals in the sense of admissions, following patients there?
So that would be probably 28.
And over the course of your career, have you had the opportunity to treat patients with CRPS?
I've had a couple of adult patients. Maya was my first pediatric patient.
Outside of CRPS, have you treated other chronic pain patients?
Absolutely, it's a big part of the practice.
And so, did there come a time that Maya Kowalski and the Kowalskis, Kyle, Maya, Beata, became patients of yours?
They in 2014, 2015. Yeah.
Yes. All right. And so, through the course, and do you continue to treat them to this day?
I do.
Approximately how often do you see them?
Depends on what's going on. Recently, maybe once or twice a year.
Okay. And then up until, let's say, the summer of 2015, how would you describe Maya's health?
It was good. She wasn't different than a lot of my other pediatric practice. She had asthma, she had some allergy issues, but that's pretty common in pediatrics.
Now, as a pediatrician, are you required by the state of Florida that if you see any signs of, confirmed signs of child abuse, that you have to report?
Absolutely.
Overruled. You can answer that question.
Sorry?
You can answer the question.
Yes, sir. I'm compelled to report it.
Tell the jury about Beata Kowalski from the times that you saw her and know her. What was she like in your professional view as a mother?
As a mother, she was very attentive, and I feel very loving towards her family and her children, very concerned about them always when I saw her.
Did you ever see at any time any indications whatsoever that Beata Kowalski contained any signs, warning signs, troublesome indications that would indicate that she might be in any way abusive to either of her children?
No.
So then, as the care progressed, then did there come a time when Maya started to have unusual pain symptoms?
That was after her July admission, when everything started.
Okay. And so let's look at, if we can, 1066-003. And we can pull it up here for you, Doctor, I think. And the date of this, for the record, is a visit of September 2nd, 2015.
Yes, sir.
And we've got this before you here. So what was going on with Maya at this time, just generally?
According to my note, that this was a follow-up of a series of ER visits and hospital visits, and she had had asthma exacerbations and had been requiring steroids, and had actually been admitted to All Children's on July 7, 2015, with an asthma exacerbation.
Does it say there how long she was? And I'm not sure it does. I'm not suggesting that it does, but
She was discharged on the 11th, it says.
all right. So 4 days there at Johns Hopkins. All right. And so it says here she's had tremendous difficulties with pain control requiring high levels of analgesia. And did you see her then at this time and physically examine her on September 2nd, 2015?
Yes, I did examine her.
And what did the examination reveal, if anything?
Can you pop up to the next page, please?
Yes, that would help.
All right, that basically I did not have any focal findings on that particular time.
All right. Now, it says there steroid-induced myopathy with severe intractable pain. Now, at this point, had anyone ID'd, if you will, CRPS?
No, sir.
Best of your knowledge. And had you seen Maya enough times at this point to be able, or strike that, had she expressed enough symptoms to you at that time to be able to diagnose that?
No, sir.
And then it says here at the bottom, number 8, behavioral disturbance with possible conversion disorder. Can you tell the jury whether during the time that you saw Maya, either here or on down the road, whether she ever actually exhibited this, or whether this was a diagnosis or possible diagnosis taken from somewhere else that you noted?
It was just, I didn't see it, but it was from findings in the records from the period, July till I saw her and follow up there.
So this came from Johns Hopkins, most probably?
Yes, sir.
But during the time that you actually saw her, did you, and you saw her in pain, can you tell the jury whether you ever saw any indications that Maya was making this up, or if either making it up out of whole cloth that she wasn't really in pain, or that she believed she was in pain, but she wasn't really in pain? Did you see any of it?
Okay, so standing leading.
Oh, yes. What, if any, signs did you see during the time you treated her of any conversion disorder?
I did not have findings over time consistent with conversion disorder.
And did you have any findings over time of factitious disorder?
No, sir.
And did you have any findings over time of Beata Kowalski being a perpetrator of Munchausen by proxy or any other derivative of child abuse?
No, sir.
Overruled. You can answer.
And your answer was?
I did not see any signs of that.
Okay. So then, if we go to the next, and for the record, it's 1066-0005, and this is your visit of October 15th, 2015. And by this time, what's happening under history?
Okay, so in this time, she had been seen by Dr. Kirkpatrick of pain management, who had diagnosed her with the complex regional pain syndrome.
Did you know of Dr. Kirkpatrick?
I did not before that.
And did you come to find out what he did?
Yes, sir.
And what were his specializations?
Well, he's anesthesia / pain management, board certified in that with a specialty in the CRPS.
And did you come to find out he was the person who started the RSD Foundation?
I was not aware of that, sir.
What is the, is RSD another name for CRPS or an older name?
Yeah, older name is reflex sympathetic dystrophy.
All right. And so here, is there a particular treatment that she had started with? In the middle of history there, I think. She started on heated
Okay, under her current medications, is there not a way for me to scroll this up? Or?
No, I'm just looking under history of present illnesses. It says that she was
Okay.
started on,
Okay, it's improved. Okay, so it says that she had received some ketamine treatments and that she had improved following the infusion series. She was taking oxycodone, which is a opiate pain medication, and Valium, which is a benzodiazepine, which is a muscle relaxant tranquilizer.
now, were those medications prescribed to her before she came to you? The oxycodone and the...
Not to my knowledge.
So, and then she says she has recently been listed with glasses as she has been continuing having
Diplopia, which is double vision.
and visual disturbances. Now, prior to this, was there any sign that Maya had these conditions, or was this the first onset?
This is the first that I was aware of it.
And in your review, did it come to your attention that this is, in fact, one of the symptoms of CRPS?
In my subsequent reading, I was aware that it falls within the spectrum of CRPS, yes, sir.
All right, and so then again, this is a carry forward on the next page, which is 0006. And again, it's carrying forward the same history of mood and behavior disturbance. But from this visit, again, did you see any signs whatsoever that Maya was actually exhibiting these as opposed to moving forward a previously made diagnosis?
No, sir, I did not see any signs, and I need to make people aware that when I do these impressions at the bottom, and a lot of that is for my purpose of keeping in the back of my mind as things roll forward, what they've been through and what might enter into their care in the future. So I will tend to try and list significant problems, even if they aren't presently active at the time.
Now, if you are going to reach a, and I'm not sure if it's called a working diagnosis or a current diagnosis, can you explain to the jury what a differential diagnosis process is?
Okay, so Maya's complaints at the time were very unusual. In her extreme pain, it was difficult to manage. And so when you get that, you start running through your mind. Anytime you're talking to a patient, you're kind of listening to what symptoms they're having, what history they're giving, and you're kind of going through your mind, ruling things out or saying, no, this is still a possibility. And so when someone comes to you with terrible pain, history of weakness, you think about things like peripheral neuropathy, which is a nerve malfunction or damage. You think about rheumatoid conditions there are things called juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, which can give you pain and inflammation and disability. You think about Guillain-Barré, which is an ascending paralysis. So you're kind of, while you're talking to these people, you're kind of working through things, saying, okay, this needs to stay back there, and this, keep working it and seeing what happens. As I'm sure you'll get to at some point in the court proceedings, the complex regional pain syndrome is an unusual and uncommon medical condition that we don't understand especially well as far as what causes the symptomatology. We do suspect some autoimmune factors in it, but it is not something that I can do a blood test or I can do a CAT scan or some other test to say, okay, bam, she's got it. Okay, so experts in the past, when this was first described in the late 1800s in pediatrics, 1970s, I think. But because it didn't have a hard and fast blood test you could do, or a CAT scan, or an X-ray, or something like that, a symposium of experts convened to try and standardize the description for complex regional pain syndrome so that they can make progress studying it and evaluating treatments for it, because you can't have everybody doing different things for something that's similar but doesn't fall into that category. So
What was the name of that?
the Budapest criteria was done, I believe, in 2010, and they came up with a series of requirements that this person needed to meet in order to be categorized to have complex regional pain syndrome. And then that's very important, because if you're studying treatments and you're studying outcomes and how they do over time, you have to have a similar population of people. And this is an unusual condition. There's not a lot of it that, there's not massive numbers of it running around. So if you want to study a rare condition, you have to make sure that your definitions are pretty strict, and you're studying a similar group. So that's what they attempted to do with the Budapest criteria.
Okay.
Sorry, that was a long-winded answer.
No, that's informative. I want to go back for a moment to the issue over who first prescribed the oxycodone. Let me show you and the jury what's been previously marked into evidence as 1008-, is it 4? And if you can look down there, and I'm not sure if it's on this page.
Discharge, yeah, I see it. The patient was discharged on PO, Valium, oxycodone, Tylenol, ibuprofen.
And to your knowledge, was this her first opioid prescribed?
To my knowledge.
And this was by whom?
I'm assuming this is an all children's discharge.
Yes, it's an all children's. All right. So, now, let's turn then to a couple months later, November 5th, 2015, and that's it previously admitted into evidence 1066-0007. This is your visit, as I say, November 2015, so you're about, what, just less than a month later. So tell the jury what's going on here.
Okay, I'm got a blank screen right at the moment.
That makes it hard.
But I have paper back because I'm old school.
It's 100-4.
What was the date?
10. I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry. It's 1066-0007. And I can put it up on here.
All right, there we go.
There we go. Okay. And is this your note?
This is my note.
What's happening now with Maya, and then we'll get into her family.
All right, so I go on to note that she was hospitalized at All Children's from October 20th to October 23rd with abdominal pain.
Was this then the second admission, to the best of your knowledge?
To my knowledge, yes, sir.
Okay, go ahead.
They worked her up for abdominal pain. They said she was noted to have obstipation, which is a fancy name for severe constipation. On workup, they put a tube down her nose into her stomach to assist the treatment of that condition. And she was given something called Miralax, which is commonly used to resolve the condition.
So the jury's aware, this is before the Mexico visit, is it not?
To my knowledge, yes, sir.
All right. And so as of November 5th, 2015, this obstipation, that means that Maya was suffering from severe constipation right there?
That's what their assumption was, but as we can get into at some point, she has had ongoing abdominal complaints across time, of which there were some objective findings that I don't think that was the whole answer, is the long and the short.
Okay. All right. And so then she is seen by another pediatric GI. I'm trying to skip ahead here.
Okay.
And then it says there's something about the parents. Can you tell the jury what was going on with Mr. and Mrs. Kowalski?
So they were frustrated with the GI visit, in that they didn't feel that her symptoms were being addressed. And I made the comment that Jack and Beata were taking turns attending Maya at night as her sleep was greatly disturbed and she would wake up with pain requiring the attendance of her parents. So both parents were having their sleep significantly shortened and attenuated by the ongoing symptoms.
Were the parents under stress at this point?
Absolutely.
And is that an unusual state for parents of a child with a painful condition?
Absolutely not. Any parent who's seen their child suffer and feels like they haven't gotten adequate resolution or control of that is going to be extremely stressed until that situation is met.
Now, underneath the current medications, can you tell the jury whether, and on the next page, plan, it also talks about, what I'm trying to inform the jury of is what meds were you and what meds did you receive back from, that had been previously described by All Children's or someone else?
Okay, so there's quite an extensive list of medications at the time I saw her on November 5th. Basically all those, she came to me with those from other physicians. The only change I made was to put her on a more powerful acid blocker to try and get her some improved control of her GI symptoms.
And again, at this point, any signs of conversion or factitious disorder or any other psychiatric, psychological problem?
Not by my account.
Let's then go to what's been previously marked into evidence as 1066-0009. For the record, Your Honor, this is a visit of December 17th, 2015, again about a month and a week after the last one. So, what's going on here now?
Okay, so now she has come back to me from her trip to Monterrey, Mexico, where she underwent the ketamine-induced coma for 5 days. And mother had reported that she had significant improvement following that treatment.
And I take it that you knew she was going to do the Mexico trip before they went?
Yes, sir.
And from your research, what were your thoughts of Maya undergoing this? And first, let me ask you, in your review, did it appear that Maya had already been treated with the typical, if you will, first stage treatment of CRPS by this point?
I'm not sure of the actual question, so why don't we start with
It may not have been a question. What I'm trying to get at is, what, if any, investigation did you do in looking at whether Maya's trip to Mexico was warranted from prior care? That's a little
So basically, Maya had been tried on the usual things that pain management does, and we do a significant amount of these conventional things in primary care, use of different non-narcotic pain medications, things called like tramadol, and I think the ketorolac, and I see a clonidine in there. At one point she was on things called gabapentin. So they had really run through the usual list of things that we try outpatient for pain control.
And had she been through the regimen of OT, PT?
Yes, she'd been trying that all along.
And for the jury, what are those, OT, PT?
Oh, sorry, yes. Occupational therapy and physical therapy. They try and improve her conditioning and use of her extremities and try and prevent long-term damage or contractures and loss of use. One thing I should say is that when you have difficult to treat conditions that aren't responding to usual modalities, it's not unusual for parents to seek other options and other treatment, especially if they see their child is having ongoing pain that's not being adequately controlled by the medical establishment. So I'm not surprised. I have a lot of motivated parents that, you know, start doing research, start contacting institutions and things to see, okay, the conventional stuff isn't working, what else do we have? And so that by itself isn't unusual.
So, and what was Beata's profession?
She was a registered nurse, specifically trained in IV infusions.
From your interaction with her, did she appear to have a good, bad, working, or excellent, strike it, how would you describe her medical knowledge for an RN of her experience?
So Beata is a very intelligent, assertive female with an excellent knowledge base. And sometimes medical professionals push back against that. But she knew what she was talking about. She was very smart.
And so there's been some testimony about risk factors in this type of treatment, the one in Mexico. What, if any, concerns did you have, and how did you resolve it? With, you know, within your mind as a attending pediatrician for the family.
Well, it's definitely an unusual line of treatment that certainly I hadn't had previous experience with. So, you know, I know that the parents were looking to help their little girl and that they had tried all the usual things, and so they were going after this. If I can expound on a moment, ketamine has been used. Ketamine is now used in a wide variety of.
Hold on, Doc.
Sir.
You kind of need to wait for a question.
Okay, sorry.
This treatment involved ketamine. Can you explain to the jury a little bit about how your knowledge of ketamine influenced any advice you gave to the family?
Yes, Your Honor, calls for a narrative answer.
Overruled on that one. You can answer.
Can you, I'm sorry, rephrase it one more time?
Sure. Can you tell the jury, insofar as the advice you were giving the parents about this, how your knowledge of ketamine and whether that influenced it?
I did not have adequate experience with the use of ketamine in that particular circumstance to give them a good background one way or another as far as whether it would be helpful. But I had heard of a wide variety of uses for ketamine in the past, IV ketamine.
And was there a physician involved who did have experience in these?
That definitely falls into the purview of pain management specialists, you know, especially if they're trying to complete or treat something like complex regional pain syndrome.
And had she been to Dr. Kirkpatrick by that time?
Yes, sir.
And in your professional opinion, did Dr. Kirkpatrick have the necessary history, training, and specialization to advise the family in that?
Yes, sir.
Objection, Judge Locke, Foundation.
Overruled that objection.
So now, can you explain a little bit about ketamine and how it functions in this CRPS venue to the jury?
I am not an expert on the use of the
How about this?
pathophysiology.
How about, what is the history of ketamine as a treatment?
Ketamine is used.
Objection, Your Honor, it's a lack of foundation. There's no knowledge or expertise been demonstrated.
Why don't you
I'll
show
let
more
you-
foundation?
Yes, sir. So through the course of your practice, have you had the opportunity to follow patients who have been through surgeries?
Yes, sir.
And have those surgeries involved sedation using ketamine?
Yes, sir.
And through the need to understand the patient, have you had the opportunity to perform research or otherwise inquire to ensure you had adequate knowledge of the function of this drug?
It came up during my training as far as pharmacologic teachings, but you know, nothing extra on top of that, you know.
While not an expert in it, are you familiar with the basics of ketamine insofar as its general uses in medicine?
Yes, sir.
Let me ask again. Can you give the jury a bit of an overview of the uses of ketamine in treatment of various diseases?
So obviously, we're here talking about ketamine to be used in complex regional pain syndrome. It's also been used in induction. It's also been used, induction of anesthesia. It's also been used in refractory depression that hasn't responded well to other of our conventional medications. And that one, actually, you can get IV infusions of ketamine in Sarasota now for refractory depression by,
All right. So,
trained specialists. And so it's not uncommon.
is it FDA approved for that use now?
I believe it is for the depression.
And so the use of ketamine in this instance to treat CRPS, what is the term off-brand or off-label?
Off-label.
What can you explain to the jury what that means?
So frequently in medicine, a drug is originally approved for a very specific indication. Say, for instance, amitriptyline was originally approved for depression. We don't use it that much for depression anymore because it's not great for that. We have better drugs, but we use it off-label for sleep disturbance. We use it for recurrent headaches. We use it in pain management. So a lot of times a drug was approved for a specific indication by the government, the FDA, and later on through research and trial and error and things, it gets used for other conditions that originally it wasn't studied for. Most companies don't go back to the FDA and get those specific approvals because that's an expensive process and very time-consuming and expensive.
All right, going back to the visit then, 1066-009, you noted that, quote, skin lesions she was suffering from have resolved. Tell us about Maya's skin lesions and the relationship to CRPS.
Well, one of the things that is described in CRPS is these nonspecific lesions that are on their extremities that sometimes can correlate with the activity of the disease, but to my knowledge, to present understanding, these lesions aren't definitive proof, so I can't biopsy these lesions and say, okay, that's a CRPS lesion. They've been noted by other clinicians to occur during the course of the disease, but at this point of our understanding, they do not help you nail the diagnosis, if you will.
Were her lesions improving?
Well, they had, I didn't comment on my note there that there was anything unusual for me to see, so by definition, they must have improved.
But she had had skin lesions apparently before going to Mexico?
That's my understanding.
And this is after Mexico or before?
This one's after.
Okay. All right. And after Mexico, can you tell the jury whether she had improvement in her asthma?
Yes, she did have improvement in her asthma, and that is one of the things that her pulmonologist had commented on, that ketamine is sometimes useful for relieving bronchospasm and helping control asthma, so it has had a little side benefit there.
As to the latest research on the relationship of different skin lesions to CRPS, would you defer to the CRPS experts?
Absolutely.
And so it says still in a wheelchair but can be touched and examined more readily than before. Can you explain to the jury what allodynia is insofar as Maya's CRPS and why this is important?
Okay, so that's a very important thing to appreciate, because until you've seen it on a patient, it's very striking. So allodynia is another fancy name for saying that a slight or a light touch, a normal touch, if you will, causes severe pain in an individual. So a light brush can cause excruciating pain. And it is one of the factors that's in the definition or criteria for CRPS by the Budapest criteria. It can occur in other conditions. I have another patient who had a cervical spine injury that had severe allodynia. And if you haven't seen it before, and I think that's part of the problem where some of these physicians, when they're assessing Maya, you think, well, this person's carrying on, they're being histrionic, they're exaggerating, okay? Because it doesn't initially make sense to you as, oh, all I did was barely touch her, and she, jumped back and carried on. And for those people, it's a real thing. It's a real, it's not a fake. At some point, they'll talk to you about the McGill pain score developed by a famous Canadian medical university, assessing different levels of pain attributed to different conditions. And it's very near the top. It's a
Some
difficult.
response for the question.
What is the McGill pain scale?
It is a scale developed at McGill University to show levels of pain attributed to various conditions.
Do we have that readily, or can we find that? If we can't, we can wait and move on. And then if you'll let us know an exhibit number before we display it.
It's not.
It's not an exhibit yet? We'll hold off. Okay. So then you saw her again on February 22nd, 2016. I think we'll skip ahead in the interest of time on that one. And then go to what's been previously marked in evidence 1066-0013, which is your visit of April 1st, 2016. All right. So tell the jury what's happening here under a history of present illness.
Okay, so she had been getting, this is April 2016, she had been getting ketamine infusions 3 to 5 times a week for the month of March and was having physical therapy. At that time, she had had a port placed in her left lateral chest.
By whom?
All Children's, I believe.
By
Explain
Johns
to the
Hopkins, All
jury what a
Children's?
port is and what they use it for real quick. It's just a device planted underneath the skin. We frequently use, say, in chemotherapy for cancer patients or for children who have blood conditions that require frequent laboratory studies or treatments. So it's a little device that's inserted underneath the skin. It has a tube that goes into their circulation. It makes access easier for their treatments.
And this was placed by Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Yes, sir.
All right. And so you say here to schedule to get some IVIG treatment. What is that?
Okay, intravenous immune globulin. So basically, that's a product that's used in medicine, purified form of a protein that's important in the immune system. IVIG has a wide variety of uses, even in neurologic conditions. We use it to treat Guillain-Barré, which is the ascending paralysis condition. And in children who have immune deficiency and are susceptible to infections, we use it in that circumstance. So it has and actually there was a paper that they used IVIG specifically with.
Objection, Your Honor, the medical literature being used to bolster.
He hasn't identified it and he hasn't stated it.
Overruled that objection. You can continue.
Go ahead.
There is a paper that wrote about the use of IVIG in CRPS.
All right, and then it says here in the middle of present illness, her appetite is variable, but she looks better. Can you tell the jury from what you recall, how'd Maya look better? What was significant to you, if anything?
Just that she had looked physically feeling better than on her previous visits with me.
More talkative, more
Yeah.
movement, a little better? Okay. And then under impressions, your number one impression was? At the bottom?
The CRPS.
Okay. Now let's move then to what's been previously marked in evidence as 1066-0015. And for the record, this is a visit with you of August 11th, 2016. So now we're 4 months later. And how's Maya doing now? She's some, 9 months post-Mexico.
Okay, so she's doing her physical therapy in the pool 3 days a week. Make the remark that she's made significant progress. At the time, she was getting the IVIG treatments and scheduled to start ketamine treatments again.
And it also says she'd finished 40 hyperbaric treatments in mid-July. Do you know whether the Kowalskis were looking for other treatments to supplant the ketamine at this time?
They were investigating various options to try and bolster her and get her better, and that was one of them.
And ketamine treatments were fairly expensive, or do you know?
They're expensive.
So was this an attempt to find a more?
Objection, Your Honor. This calls for speculation of the state of mind of someone.
Well, I haven't finished the question.
Okay, well, let's let him finish the question, but let's make sure it's not speculation.
I'll rearrange. What, if anything, was their goal in using the hyperbaric and the IVIG insofar as the continued use of the ketamine?
What did I think about the treatments of the IVIG?
I'll withdraw. Don't worry about it.
Okay.
All right. So at this point, what's her weight there? Under physical exam?
29.4 kilos.
Okay. So what does it say there in this first paragraph under history? How is her appetite? It's a
We're
less.
talking about the August 6, 2016 visit?
Yes, sir. Under the history of present illness, that first paragraph, last sentence.
Appetite was good, and she had a good weight gain.
All right. So overall, now 9 months after the Mexico treatment, what was your impression of how Maya was doing insofar as her CRPS and overall health?
It was progress.
Let's then go to February 22nd, 2016. Let me see, am I out of the, no, sorry. I think we've already been through that. Yeah, we've already done that one. One moment. All right, so I'd like to talk a little bit about Maya's weight before and after she went into Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital on that October 7th through October 7th, 2016 through January 14th, 2017 visit. We're here about.
Hold on one second, Dr. Wassenaar. Dr. Wassenaar just pulled out some files.
Yes,
Okay.
I told counsel he was bringing his files, and we previously marked into evidence the one that we're going to use, which I'll reference now, Your Honor.
That's fine.
There's 2792.0-001, and then Dr. Wassenaar, if you have other records that confirm this chart, let us know as we ask questions. But if we could bring up 2792-001 for the jury. Okay.
Can I explain what this is?
Yeah. Can you explain what this is?
Okay. So in pediatrics, we use growth charts for height and weight, pretty standard from the time they're newborn up until 18. It's basically a graph constructed from measurements over thousands of children. It's standardized. The bottom of the graph is the 5th percentile, the top, well, in this particular one, 97th percentile. Anything between the top and the bottom of the graph is considered normal. The dark line in the middle is considered the median, the 50th percentile. In pediatric, we use it to assess for deviations in the patient's condition. So, for instance, if we get an infant that's failing to thrive, that they're following a particular line on the growth chart, and suddenly they're falling off that line, they're falling below, or conversely, if it's going up, then that's your cue to ask more questions, do more investigations, what's going on, that they're falling off their growth curve.
Now, did I ask you to go back and look at weights of Maya immediately before she went in to Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital on October 7th, 2016, and your next visit immediately after her January 14th, 2017 visit?
Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury what your findings were?
Basically, that the weight in August of 2016 was 64.8 pounds, and when she came out, she was 64.6 pounds, so no real change.
But she'd actually gone down 0.2 pounds?
Yes, sir.
So there's been a representation here that Maya gained weight during her visit. From your records, is that confirmed or rejected?
By my records, by my scales that we normally weigh her on, she was essentially the same or slightly less.
No significant gain at Johns Hopkins from your weights?
Objection, Your Honor, leading.
What, if any, weight gain at Johns Hopkins was reflected, if any?
Nothing was reflected as far as gaining weight.
Okay. Tell us about Kyle now. There was an allegation raised about Kyle Kowalski and failing to thrive or malnourished. Can you tell the jury about Kyle's?
Can I object to the predicate, Judge? There's an allegation
It's from
being quoted that I'm not aware of.
Sustained, let's just ask questions without the commentary.
Tell us about Kyle's weight.
Kyle's been a pretty healthy guy, and I don't get to see him very much. And he looks, like a lot of my other teenage males, long and slender, and can probably eat you out of house and home. So I don't have any concerns regarding Kyle.
Got it. Now, did there come a time that, hang on one moment, let me see. I wanted to continue on then onto 1066-10017. And this is a visit, January 18th, 2017, noting for the record that Maya had left Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital on the 14th. Now, if you would, just review that again. It's 1066-0017.
This is the one in 2017 visit?
Yes, sir.
So basically, this is the first time I've seen Maya since coming out of All Children's, and it was, as I made the comment, a terrible ordeal. I made the comment that Child Protective Services stepped in and removed custody of Maya from the parents, in that they were accused of Munchausen by proxy, and labeling the child as having a fictitious disorder or a conversion disorder.
Again, had you ever seen any signs of that as the family pediatrician?
No.
How was Maya doing physically after the ministrations of Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital?
Not great, but she was grateful to be out of the hospital.
Okay. And it says that in the middle there, Maya continues to have great difficulties and is in worse physical shape than what she went in.
Yes, sir.
You see that? Was that your observation at the
That's my
time?
observation.
And then it says, prior to her being admitted, she was able to push herself around in the house with a wheelchair and do transfers back and forth from the chair to the wheelchair. And was she able to do that now that she'd been in there for 3.5 months?
She was much more sensitive to the pain.
Did it appear that the CRPS had improved or gotten worse from your
Gotten
perspective?
worse, my opinion.
Then at the bottom, the third line, or fourth line up from the first paragraph, history of illness, did you note some scattered lesions on her arm?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Can you tell the jury whether these appear to be substantially the same as the lesions that you had noted prior to her going in to Johns Hopkins?
Prior to
Did they look the same, generally the same as the ones you'd
Generally
seen?
the same, yes, sir.
All right. And so she is going then to see a specialist in Rhode Island,
Yes, sir.
and by this point, her mother's passed.
Yes, sir. She passed on January 7th.
All right. Now, I want to ask you, if we can, about the time period when the Kowalskis went in on October 7th. Over this period, those first few days at Johns Hopkins, what, if any, contact did you have with anyone there?
I received a call from a resident physician from All Children's just asking some basic questions about her condition.
And how long was the phone call, would you say?
A few minutes.
And during that phone call, did he explain to you that they were questioning her CRPS diagnosis?
No, that was not made clear in my conversation with them.
Did they ask you anything about your knowledge or your basis of knowledge as to whether there was any history indicative of Munchausen by proxy?
No, sir.
Did they ask you for any information about your knowledge of whether you saw any signs in Maya of conversion disorder or factitious disorder?
No, sir.
Did it surprise you when you learned what was actually going on?
Yes, very much.
Objection, Your Honor, surprise, irrelevant.
I'm sorry, what's the legal
Irrelevant.
basis?
Irrelevant.
Overruled.
And can you tell the jury what's wrong with this picture? In other words, if it is, what are your concerns with the level of investigation with you under these circumstances?
If you're considering a patient having conversion disorder or Munchausen by proxy, in which someone is inflicting harm on a patient, it can be a very difficult thing to establish, and so you need to talk to multiple physicians and multiple individuals to get their perspective on, you basically get all the information, basically saying, does this have basis, does this have merit? And it's very difficult. The consequences are high if you get it wrong, if you accuse somebody of it, and it's not the case, it's a terrible thing. If you have a case and they miss it, and the child goes on to be, subject to this, it's also a terrible thing. So it's very important that you utilize all the information at hand, and you certainly, in the articles I've read, talking to the primary care physician is one of the big components of that.
And are you, through those conversations,
Hold on one second, Mr. Anderson.
May we approach?
You may. Members of the jury, I'm going to direct that you disregard that last answer, and I'm going to sustain the objection. I'm going to remind you that the court has already determined that there was a good faith basis for the call to the central abuse hotline. Now, Mr. Anderson will be allowed to ask follow-up questions relative to the standard of care, though. Mr. Anderson.
Leaving aside anything about the court order to the initial 2 calls, but just dealing with the standard of care here for pediatricians in this situation. What is the standard of care in terms of contacting the prior treating physicians, including the attending pediatrician?
It would be my hope that that would be mandatory.
And what are the risks if the doctor, the hospital in this instance, fails to contact the prior treating physicians?
Then you're at risk of making a grave mistake, and child protection team is a difficult, it's a difficult.
We'll stay away from that.
Okay.
So there's no question pending, and whoever's cell phone's going off in the audience, let's turn it off, please.
I'm sorry, rephrase the question.
He's going to ask you a different question.
Yes. Okay. Now, prior to this, did I ask you to review the records of Maya's liver function? And those are related, among others, in 1066-38 through, and we don't have to pull these up, it's just for the record.
Is that the end of the question?
Yeah, not yet. I'm trying to make sure I get the record straight here. Among others, 1066, 38, and 39. But did I ask you to review the Maya's chart insofar as her liver functions around the time that she returned from Mexico and from there on during the ketamine treatment?
Yes, sir.
And
Do we have a clarification of where these records he's been asked to review come from?
Please do that.
yes, have you, all right. Through the course of your care and treatment of Maya, did many of the providers provide you with their notes and test results?
I saw the lab results performed by Dr. Kirkpatrick and Dr. Hanna on occasion and saw their liver function test, yes, sir.
And your chart, does it not, reflects notations from, among others, Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital and from Tampa General Hospital, does it not? And if you
My
have,
recollection, sir.
okay, and from Sarasota General.
Yes, sir, but I don't have those open in front of me right now.
Okay. Well, for example, as to, I think this is Sarasota. Yes, Memorial at 1066-0038 to 1066-0039. And on to 1066-0040, 1066-0041, 1066-0042, 43.
Is there a question, Mr. Anderson?
Yes, I wanted to make sure I had the record clear of what was in evidence, Your Honor. Based on your review of the records provided to you, the blood work done on Maya Kowalski, first, did she have any issues insofar as cholesterol or other typical
I
issues?
had seen a blood result, I don't have it in front of me, and I can't tell you when it was, that she had high cholesterol at one point.
Okay.
I'm looking at this lab report from 6/18/19 that shows essentially normal liver function tests.
Okay. And working backwards then, in your review, did you see any indications that the ketamine treatment was causing any damage or problems to her liver?
No, sir, I did not see that.
If Maya had had any difficulties with cognitive function as a result of her ketamine treatments, did you see, and I'm just asking this, I don't know, and did you see her enough times to be able to tell if she was displaying some?
I never saw any evidence of cognitive dysfunction with Maya.
There was a medical referral form, and I think this one, make sure I've got the date here. I believe it's, is it 1066-0097, the one immediately before or during the period of time of relapse. Let's pull it up and see if we got the right one here. This is in evidence and part of his record, Your Honor. All right. Now, did there come a time on a medical referral form where you had written to the school board various reasons why Maya should stay in her homeschooling program rather than going back into school? This is before the Johns Hopkins admission.
Okay. Yes, and I've done this in a number of circumstances with other children with chronic medical conditions. It was my opinion that in this circumstance, with her complex medical history and the things she'd been going through, that she was best served by continuing her hospital homebound status, meaning that teachers would come and work with her at home, and that way she could go get her treatment, she could get physical therapy, she could get the things that she needed to do. And it was my opinion that she would be best served by doing this.
So, for instance, where at least one of them reflects that some of the medications that Maya takes may cause some lack of function. Was that because you're actually observing it, or because the school board needed some reasons why?
School board needed a reason. It wasn't, I'm trying to work within the parameters they give me. The medications that she was on, in theory, could have caused difficulties, but I did not witness those.
Was this a chance? Was this just the family asked you to help them, and you were trying to help them with?
Yes.
All right. Now, I noticed also in your records you received several notes from Johns Hopkins, both before and after the Mexico trip. And I'd like to take you through one before and one after. There is one which has been previously marked into evidence as 1066-0103. And this is from Dr. Tony Kreisman. It's dated August 17th. Maybe that's the wrong one. Let me make sure I've got the right one. Okay, let's show instead, wrong year, sorry about that. Exhibit 1066-106 and 1066-0107. So it's 0106, 0107. First, on dash 01006, at this time, how many medications did Dr. Kreisman at Johns Hopkins note that Maya had?
There's 17 on her medication list.
The record speaks for itself. He's asking for an opinion regarding another witness's record.
Let's just go with legal basis. I'm gonna sustain the objection.
Predicate.
Still sustain.
All right. And so, does it reflect there that Dr. Kreisman was noting that Maya was receiving ketamine infusions
Same objection.
there at the
Judge.
top?
That's,
This is part of his file. Is it no?
I'm gonna overrule this one, but we're not gonna read the entire file here.
No,
Okay.
I don't plan to. All right. And does it indicate also that she had begun hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
yes, sir.
If you look then on the next page, can you tell us the note from Dr. Kreisman back to you under the physical examinations, what he was reporting to you in terms of, let's see.
Same objection, Judge. Apparently we need to approach.
Do we need to approach Mr. Anderson, because I'm gonna sustain the objection?
Judge, I'm just asking him whether he was advised by the hospital on a particular point.
Sustain the objection. Let's move on.
So how is Maya doing of late? Strike that. Did there come a time after she left Johns Hopkins that she had a relapse of her CRPS?
She had a period where her weight went down dramatically, and she again developed pain in her extremities.
And was it necessary then to hospitalize her?
It became necessary to hospitalize Maya when all our measures trying to get her weight up and to treat her effectively as an outpatient failed. And we were very sensitive to the fact that the last thing that Maya and her family wanted to do was go back in the hospital, and we tried as long as we could until it was clear we were at a dangerous point that we needed to hospitalize.
Did Maya want to go in or not go in?
She didn't want to go in.
And did this involve a feeding tube?
Yes, sir, it did.
And Maya was complaining of pain in her midsection and extremities at this time?
Yes, sir.
And do you know, if you do, whether this was caused by something physical or emotional? And I'm not asking for the actual event, but if you know which it was.
I think it was caused by both. I think she was under extreme stress at the time, and I think things went south on us in a hurry.
Now, insofar as how Maya is let me show you trial exhibit for marker identification 2375 and ask you whether this appears as part of your medical records. I'll have it brought up there. I have a hard copy if you need.
Yes, this was a letter sent to me by Beata after the protective order was put in place.
All right. And then, why did you place this in your file?
Just because I thought it underscored that, she wasn't being abused, that people weren't doing things to her that she, put her in pain and was, it underscored to me how much she loved her parents and how much she wanted to be reunited with them.
Did it advise you of her medical and emotional condition?
Yes.
And this has been previously admitted, Judge?
Yes.
Permission to publish the original to the jury, but I need to show the witness first to elaborate on what's in the back. May I approach?
One page from the clerk. The clerk has the original.
Now, on the back side of this, are there any imprints there that you noted?
There was some areas of increased coloration that were, I assume, corresponding to the kisses she was sending to her family.
Permission to publish the physical?
You may. Again, members of the jury, you're going to have all the exhibits in the back room with you when you deliberate. So this will not be the only time you get to see this or any of the other exhibits.
I know what I wanted to ask you. May I proceed while they're observing that, Your Honor?
If we're having the jury look at something, we should wait. Doctor, you can't be looking at your phone right now.
Sorry.
Mr. Anderson, just to let you know, we've been going for about an hour and 20 minutes, so at some point in the next 15 or 20 minutes, we need to take a break.
I will be done before 10:30, Your Honor.
Okay.
Two more areas of questions, Doctor. You previously testified concerning the standard of care in these circumstances. The standard of care in this area, do you have an opinion based upon your background, training, and experience and knowledge of the standard in this area, as you previously testified, as to whether failure to advise oneself, a physician's failure to advise himself or herself of the history of the family with, among others, the treating pediatrician, is a breach of that standard of care?
I believe so.
Overruled.
I believe it is.
I want to take you back to one other point. On the 5th of August 2015, and I'm not sure whether we've got that one to bring up real quick, but there was a prescription for Xanax and Celexa to Beata Kowalski. I don't know if you recall prescribing those to her.
Yes, sir.
What was the purpose?
Maintenance medications. I'd say half to a third of my patients is probably on SSRIs or benzodiazepines these days, and so it's a stressful world out there, and we use the tools we have to try and get them through these stressors.
And were the Kowalskis going through at this point in 2015, before anyone diagnosed what was wrong with their child, a stressful period?
Yes, sir.
And did you then diagnose her as having any type of psychological disorder, or was this simply a episodic event?
No, I did not diagnose her as having a psychological disorder. It was simply given to her to try and help her cope with the stress.
Thank you, doctor. Their witness.
Is your cross going to be more than about 10 minutes? Just trying to figure out when we're going to take our break, and it sounds like we're going to take it now. I see that one of the jurors had is that a question? Is it a question for the doctor? We need to wait until all the questions are asked, so why should we move on to that? Members of the jury, we're going to take a break. Let's try to keep it to 15 minutes. Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information about this case. And we'll call you back in about 15 minutes.
All rise, jurors exit.
Okay. Please be seated, everyone. The jury is out of our presence. Dr. Wassenaar, while we're on break, you cannot discuss this case with either side. If you need to return your emails and calls, that's fine, so long as it has nothing to do with this case, okay? Any issues we need to address before we take our break? Okay, we'll be in recess for 15 minutes. I appreciate it. And make those calls.
Okay, everyone, please be seated. Members of the jury, I want to confirm while you were away, you did not discuss this case amongst yourselves. You did no investigation and received no information. Is that all correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Hunter.
Thank you, Your Honor. May it please the court. Morning. We've met before, haven't we, Dr. Long now?
Sorry, sir?
We have met before.
Yes,
haven't
sir.
we? Nice to see you. Let's kind of get a couple things squared away up front if we could. You've been treating the Kowalski family with the exception of Jack for several years, correct?
Yes, sir.
And you agreed to appear here to testify on their behalf, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you have occasion to meet with Mr. Anderson before you appeared here today?
I did.
Okay. And he had a discussion with you about what your testimony would consist of?
We had some discussion about possible things that would be discussed, yes, sir.
Well, he asked you to review some records for him, correct?
Yes, sir.
And testify about those records?
Yes, sir.
Right. And you are appearing here today as an advocate for the Kowalski family, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So you're not just a witness, you're an advocate.
Yes, sir.
Let me take you back, if I could, to the first time that you saw Maya Kowalski. That was in 2014.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to belabor this, but she came in at that point to just establish a relationship, a new pediatrician in Florida.
Yes, sir.
All right. And she came in with a diagnosis of asthma, correct?
Yes, sir.
And she had an action plan for the asthma.
Yes, sir.
Is that right? Did you ever get her records from her previous physician?
I have a copy of their action plan. Mm-hmm.
Would you ever get her records from a previous physician?
I don't think I had anything from the Chicago
Okay.
hospital.
Well, you never talked to her previous physician who was transferring care to you, did you?
No, sir, I did
All
not.
right. Now, just for kind of a baseline here and for future reference, what was, I've got 1066-1, but the only reason I mention that is to call attention to the weight at that time.
What was the date of that, sir?
That was 11/25, check that, I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
11/25/14.
Yes, sir.
It's 25.3 kilos.
Yes, sir.
Is your math good at that 2.2 times conversion better than mine?
I have it converted someplace, sir.
It's about 64 pounds, isn't it?
Should be. Let me see what I did with that. Well, we can do the math, but. Oh, there it is. So the conversion is 55.7, yes, sir.
Okay. 55.7 pounds.
Pounds. Yes,
And that's as of your first visit with her.
yes, sir.
And then you didn't see her again until September of 2015?
Saw her June 19th, 2015.
I'm sorry?
Oh, no, that was my partner. You stand correct. Yes, sir.
So at that time, back in 2015, I think you told counsel that you were still doing hospital
Work.
practice,
Yes,
correct?
sir. Mm-hmm.
And you mentioned something about you were on the medical staff at both hospitals.
Yes, sir.
That would be both Sarasota Memorial and Doctors
No, sir. That would be the two campuses of.
of Sarasota Memorial.
Mhm.
Did you have privileges at Doctors?
No, sir.
So were you aware at all of her ER visits and admissions to Doctors Hospital in the summer of 2015?
I don't think I had records of that until she came in to see me in September.
Did you know she had been to Venice Hospital in 2015, in the summer of 2015?
I don't have those records, sir, yes, sir.
Okay, well,
But
you weren't aware of that.
I was aware that she had been to
You weren't called in consultation to see her
No,
at
sir.
either Doctors or Venice,
No,
correct?
sir.
And when she went to Sarasota Memorial, you weren't called there either, correct?
No, sir.
And were you a part of her admission to All Children's on the 2 or 3 admissions she had in July of 2015?
No, sir.
You weren't involved in that at all?
Yes, sir. Correct.
And you weren't involved in her final admission in July of 2015 at All Children's before she went to Lurie's, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And can we agree but you did get the records from those?
Yes, sir.
And you did see the discharge summaries from those?
Not all of them, but I've seen some of them, sir, I'm sure.
Okay. Well, when you saw this patient in September, she had not just had those several admissions to All Children's, and she had not just had this generalized pain that she presented to you with.
Mm-hmm.
She had also been to Lurie's Children's Hospital, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did you have any records at all from Lurie's?
Not that I recollect, sir.
Did you have any indication from Lurie's of the psychologists and pain management folks who saw her there?
Not at that time that I saw her in September.
Okay. And that was after she was discharged from All Children's, correct?
From the July admission, sir?
Right.
Yes, sir.
And then she went from Lurie's to Tampa General, correct?
Yes, sir, for physical therapy.
Okay, and she was under the care there of a Dr. Kornberg?
I remember seeing the name, yes, sir.
Okay, do you know who Dr. Kornberg is?
No, sir.
You know he's a pediatric
I have no
rehabilitation?
knowledge of Dr. Kornberg.
Have no knowledge of it, okay. Did you know that she saw a psychologist and a psychiatrist at Tampa General?
I was aware.
And you know what her discharge diagnosis from Tampa General was?
I don't have those records in front of me, but I think it was conversion or somatization or something to that effect.
Okay. So when she presented to you on September 2nd, 2015, you had not seen all the discharge summaries from her admissions to All Children's. You had no knowledge of Lurie's, and you had Tampa General's discharge, but you hadn't really read it. Is that a fair characterization?
That's fair.
Okay. And you knew in general that there was a suspicion at Tampa General after a month of hospitalization, or close to it, that there was a somatic syndrome or conversion disorder suspected. You knew that?
I'm aware that that's what they thought.
Okay. So you see her in September 2nd, 2015, what, 2 or 3 weeks after her discharge?
That sounds about right. I don't have that exact
all
timeline
right.
in front
Well,
of me.
let's ballpark it. Who was she seeing for physical therapy then?
Post Tampa General?
Yes, sir.
I'm not aware.
Do you know how many times she'd been?
No, sir.
Who was she seeing for psychological therapy at that time?
I am unclear whether she was still seeing Eagle's Wings at that time or that was later date, sir.
Well, when you say Eagle's Wings, you're talking about a practice. Do you know who it was she was seeing and what their credentials were?
No, sir.
Okay. The reason I ask is that when you saw her that September, you talk about her stormy course over the summer. She was wheelchair bound, correct?
Yes, sir.
So she was unable to get out of a wheelchair, unable to function, and the history was that the specialists at Tampa General and the specialists at Lurie's were suspecting a conversion disorder, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you just didn't think that fit?
I did not think that fit.
Okay. Well, they had seen the patient for a several week hospitalization, and then that which followed a several day hospitalization. They had done, well, let me just stop there. Did you pick up the phone at that point and talk to any of those doctors and ask, this is your diagnosis, I just don't think it fits. Can we reconcile this? Did you do that?
No, sir.
Did you know that she underwent an EMG study at 10?
Yes, sir, I was aware of that.
Okay. And did you know that she had an MRI?
I know at some point she had an MRI of the brain. Yes, sir.
Okay. So did that figure in your thinking at all?
All data for...
Okay. Now, reference was made to an oxycodone prescription she had at this point.
Yes, sir.
Do you know who wrote that prescription as opposed to the one that she got a month and a half before when she was discharged from All Children?
No, sir, I do not know.
Okay. Did you continue that prescription yourself?
I do not believe, I may have written it on one occasion, but I don't believe, I certainly wasn't the one that supplied her on a regular basis.
But you continued the oxycodone prescription that day, did you not, sir?
I'd have to reference my record, sir.
Well, did you know at that point who she was getting that prescription from if it wasn't you?
No, sir, unless it was entered in my chart, I did not give it to her.
Okay. Now, with what you knew of what the diagnosis had been or the suspicions had been at Tampa General or Lurie's, did you hear anything about CRPS being suspected?
Not at that time, sir, no.
Did you know that one of the specialists at Lurie's had a special interest in CRPS?
No, sir.
If he objects, you just stop.
The answer stands as given.
Turning, if we could, to your physical examination on September 2nd, 2015.
Oh, yes, sir.
Did you note allodynia?
I did not.
Did you note any skin changes in terms of color?
Not documented in my record, sir.
Did you note any skin lesions in your record?
Not at that time. Did I?
Did you note
Documented.
any change?
Objection. May the witness be allowed to answer the question?
Let's ask the whole question, and Dr. if you'll let him ask the question, and then we'll listen to your whole answer.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I had it. Sorry. Did you note any changes in skin temperature?
I did not document that, sir.
Okay. All of those things I've just talked about are potential findings for CRPS, correct?
Yes, sir. I'm aware of that now.
Okay. And to this point in your career, you had never seen CRPS in a child, is that right?
That's correct.
You had seen it in adults,
Mm-hmm.
and you knew what it looked like in adults,
Yes, sir.
but you'd never seen it in a child in 30 some odd years, correct?
Correct.
And you saw no indication of that in the records from Tampa General or all children's that you saw?
Oh, the CRPS, sir?
Yes, sir, of a suspicion of CRPS.
No, sir.
All right. Now, on that date, what was the patient's weight?
25.5 kilos again.
No change in close to a year?
Let's see. 93, 15. Yes, sir.
Then you next saw this patient on October 15th?
Yes, sir.
And this was after she saw Dr. Kirkpatrick.
Yes, sir.
Now, you've talked to counsel about what you knew of Dr. Kirkpatrick or didn't know. You'd never heard of him before, right?
Correct. Prior to that.
Okay. And you thought he was board certified?
Yes, sir.
Where'd you get that idea?
I thought that came up in deposition, sir.
Is there a AMA recognized specialty in CRPS?
No, sir. Pain management.
Pain management.
Mm-hmm.
Did you know whether Dr. Kirkpatrick was board certified in pain management?
Like I said, I assumed he was.
Beyond scope. Overall.
I'm sorry.
I thought that I was told that he was board certified, sir.
Who told you that?
I thought the parents.
Did they also tell you he was board certified in neurology or something else?
No, sir.
But you thought he was board certified in pain management?
Yes, sir.
Did you think he was board certified in anesthesia?
That's basically, they have to be board certified in anesthesia and then have a subspecialty in pain management.
In other words, you have to have an anesthesia in order to get pain management.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
All right. And you thought he was board certified in both?
That was my impression, sir.
When you examined this young lady on October, well, first of all, let me back up a little bit. By this point, in October of 2015, your patient had already had several doses of high-dose ketamine from Dr. Kirkpatrick, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Did you know what the doses were?
No, sir.
At that time, did you have any familiarity with the use of ketamine, high-dose ketamine, to treat CRPS?
No, sir.
Never heard of that, had you?
Unclear.
I'm sorry?
Not sure.
Certainly never had one of your patients suggested to it.
That's true.
Had you had any of your adult patients treated that way?
No, my adult patients did not receive IV ketamine.
So you don't use ketamine in your practice,
No, sir.
and you never heard of it being used in a child with CRPS. Is that right?
Up until that point, correct.
Okay. And you never heard Dr. Kirkpatrick?
That's true. He was operating out of Tampa.
Well, you knew who the folks were at All Children's, right?
I knew some of the folks at All Children's. I don't know a lot of their staff. Yes, sir.
You know how to contact them, correct?
Yes, sir.
In fact, you still refer to All Children's, don't you?
Yes, sir.
Fairly frequently, correct?
I pick and choose.
Okay. You've sent a number of cases up there this year, right?
Probably fair to say.
All right. Point is, you know how to contact Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
You know, there's a special line for doctors to call in.
Yes, sir, but that's not how it normally works.
Okay. Well, you know how to contact the doctors up there, don't you?
Yes, sir.
And you get a dial pad on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. In any event, in 2015, when you saw this patient and heard about the ketamine she was getting, heard about this treatment you'd never heard of before, did you call Dr. Kirkpatrick?
No, sir.
Okay. Did have you ever talked to Dr. Kirkpatrick?
Not directly that I can recollect, sir.
Okay. So you never picked up the phone and called him and said, what's this treatment that you're giving my patient?
Mm-hmm. No, sir.
All right. So when you saw her that day in October of 2015, what did you find on a physical examination?
Well, physical exam was pretty unremarkable other than, couldn't be examined to touch,
She didn't want to be touched?
Yeah.
Okay. It's hypersensitive?
Yeah.
That's a new finding, right? Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Because you didn't note that
No.
the previous month. Correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So after the first round of ketamine, she's got a new finding that makes examination of her more difficult. Right?
That's my understanding, sir.
And on that particular day, when you did your physical examination, did you find any indication of skin lesions?
There's nothing documented there, sir.
Well, given the diagnosis, that would be significant, wouldn't it?
Again, the skin lesions aren't used for criteria for diagnosing CRPS, sir.
But they're significant to the diagnosis, correct?
It's not what I would use to make the diagnosis, sir.
It's one of a constellation of symptoms you might consider, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if you're considering making a diagnosis of CRPS and you find skin lesions, that's a significant finding, isn't it?
I disagree. It's not part of the criteria used to diagnose that.
But it's
something
consistent with the disease, right?
you can have skin lesions for different causes. We already established they're non-specific.
Okay. So you couldn't tell. Well, back up. I'll cover that in a minute. Let's do this. Let's talk about changes in skin temperature. Did you find that on October 15th, 2015?
No, sir. I was already in agreement with the diagnosis from Dr. Kirkpatrick and was not performing that kind of exam on her.
So you just accepted his diagnosis?
It fit. She met the criteria based on his description and his notes.
So you had his notes?
I did have them.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir. That's my recollection.
Your recollection?
Yes, sir.
Did you see his video?
Not at that time, no, sir.
Okay. Have you ever seen a video of his first visit with this young lady?
No, I have not.
At that time, what medications was this young lady on?
We're talking October 15th, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right, she was on albuterol, which is a bronchodilator for her asthma, baclofen, which is a type of muscle relaxant, clonidine, which can be used for pain relief. She was on diazepam, which is Valium, which is a tranquilizer. She had access to an EpiPen, which is an epinephrine if needed in a severe asthma attack or allergic response. She was on Flonase, which is a nasal steroid, fluoxetine, which is a antidepressant, melatonin to help her sleep, Miralax, bronchodilators, more asthma meds, and an acid blocker.
How many medications was she on?
Looks like 11, 12. Some of them are as-needed medicines. They're not given regularly.
Now, you refilled her oxycodone at that point, correct?
On that one occasion, yes, sir.
All right. And did you have any idea how long that was going to go on?
No, sir, but I wasn't, that was a one-off sort of thing. That normally she would be getting her meds from pain management.
Did you know that pain management, that Dr. Kirkpatrick expected you to do it?
No, there was no communication to that effect.
Um,
And that would be not following with the protocols for pain management. They tend to like to handle that.
Okay. You noted that she had been to All Children's for acute abdominal pain, correct?
There was so many, let's see here. You talking that specific note?
I'm sorry, I've gotten ahead of myself here. That's the next note. We'll come back to that.
Okay.
Okay. So you renewed her prescription for oxycodone and said you'd see her in 2 or 3 months. Is that
Yes,
right?
sir. Mm-hmm.
So you next saw her, as counsel indicated, on November 5th,
Yes, sir.
and that's, about 3 weeks later?
Yes, sir.
And at that point, she had been to All Children's
Yes, sir.
with what proved to be obstipation.
Mm-hmm.
Would you tell the jury what obstipation is?
I believe we discussed it, but it's basically a severe form of constipation.
That can be caused by narcotics and oxycodone?
Can be caused by medication use, yes, sir.
Can it be caused by oxycodone?
Absolutely.
Okay. At that point, there was a conversion being made to put this young lady on a dilaudid an IV dilaudid patient-controlled anesthesia device, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you discuss that with Dr. Kirkpatrick?
No, sir.
That's a situation where there's an indwelling IV line.
Yes, sir.
That's a PICC line,
Mm-hmm.
correct?
Yes, sir.
Incidentally, do you ever order PICC lines to be placed?
Order PICC lines on people getting long-term IV antibiotics, yes, sir.
Okay. And when you do that, do you expect the person placing the PICC line to endorse or second-guess your diagnosis and your treatment?
No, sir.
They're just a technician, right?
Well, you place the order for the PICC line, yes, sir.
And you expect them to put it in and not question why it's being put there?
Normally.
Okay. Now, the Dilaudid is a synthetic form of narcotic, correct?
Yes, sir.
And that also has a number of potential issues with it, doesn't it?
Yes, sir.
Did you know how long that was going to go on?
No, sir.
Did you ever discuss with Dr. Kirkpatrick how long that narcotic was going to be given to your patient?
No, sir. He is the person controlling the pain management routine.
Okay. Now, you did know at this point that the patient was planning to go to Mexico for a ketamine coma. Is that right?
Yeah, I believe that was the... I'm not sure if I knew that date or not, sir.
Let me ask you to have reference, please, sir, to your note regarding your first visit with Mrs. Kowalski of that same day.
Okay.
I think you'll find in there that there's some discussion of
Okay.
going to Mexico. Okay. Did you have any idea what the coma would consist of in terms of how much ketamine the patient would be given or how long she would be in a coma?
I understood it was to be 5 days, but the dosing was not discussed.
Had you ever heard of that being done before?
Again, we were on new grounds there with, complex regional pain syndrome, and so I don't have a extensive background for people having received it.
I'm sorry?
I didn't have a large pool of patients to draw experience from for that, sir. It's an unusual condition.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit more about that as long as you made reference to it. It's an unusual condition in adults, correct?
Yes, sir. It's an uncommon condition in adults.
Uncommon. But it's rare in children, correct?
More rare, yes, sir.
Okay. So rare you'd never seen it before.
Correct. Not in children.
And sufficiently rare, had you ever seen it presenting as a generalized pain syndrome?
Have I ever seen it? No,
Yes, sir.
No, sir.
All right. Because usually it's regional, right? Name implies.
Me-
Chronic regional pain syndrome.
More common in adults to be regional. Okay.
So you were dealing with a doctor you'd never heard of, a disease that you'd never seen before in this setting, and two sets of treatment. The initial ketamine treatment by Dr. Kirkpatrick and now this coma. Two sets of treatment that you'd never heard of before. Is that right?
That sounds accurate.
Okay. And you had no discussion with Dr. Kirkpatrick about any of this?
No, sir.
When you saw her on the 5th, had her condition changed? Was she still wheelchair bound?
Yes, sir.
She was still non-functional?
Yes, you're still having this severe extremity pain.
Okay. And so she was still unable to go to school?
That's my understanding.
Now, at that point, you basically just kind of let Dr. Kirkpatrick drive the ship, so to speak. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And you didn't provide him with any input at all, correct?
Correct.
And you never tried to reconcile his diagnosis with that of the other specialists who had seen this patient, right?
No, I think that when you looked at his criteria, it fit the best of existing explanations. The chronic regional pain syndrome fit her better than anything else.
Okay. So you then next saw her on December 17th,
Yes, sir.
after she'd come back to Mexico, from Mexico,
Yes,
right?
sir.
She's still in a wheelchair?
Yes, sir.
She's still not functional.
She could be, I made a note that she could be touched and examined more readily than previously.
But in terms of function, ability to go
She
to
was
school,
still in a wheelchair.
she couldn't walk. She's still in a wheelchair.
Yes, sir.
She's still non-functional. Correct?
But improved.
Improved. And that improved meant her pain wasn't as bad.
Yes, sir.
Didn't go away, it just wasn't as bad.
Yes, sir.
Now, at that point, she's about to go back to Mexico again. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
And she's anemic,
Yes, sir.
and she's actually lost some weight
A little bit.
previously.
Yes, sir.
Did you know whether she was getting any physical therapy at this point?
I know there was ongoing attempts to give her physical therapy, but sometimes if she couldn't be touched, it's hard to achieve if she can't tolerate being touched.
Let me ask you this. Did you ever talk to her physical therapist?
No, sir.
Did you even know where she was getting physical therapy?
I think there was different places at different times, sir, so I'm not aware at that particular moment.
Okay. Were you under the impression that she was still getting psychological therapy?
I don't make a comment on that, sir.
So you didn't know one way or the other?
Yes, sir.
And have you ever spoken with any of her psychological counselors or mental health counselors
At any point in time or at this point in time, sir?
at that point in time?
At that point in time, no.
So and you didn't know who they were,
No,
if
sir.
any?
No, I'm confident she was seeing somebody.
But you don't know who.
Discussions with the parents. Mm-hmm.
You don't know who, and you don't know under what circumstances.
Correct.
So you saw her for a illness visit in February. Is that right?
Correct.
And then you also saw her, as counsel and you have discussed, in April of 2016, April 1st, 2016.
Yes, sir.
At that point, did you know who was treating her with ketamine?
I'm trying to think whether it was Dr. Hanna or Dr. Kirkpatrick at that time. I'll have to go back and look.
Okay. Well, did you know how long, I mean, you make reference to multiple ketamine treatments. I think you say 3 to 5 times a week for the entire month of March.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Did you know what the doses were?
No, sir.
Did you know why it was she was receiving that much?
Because that was what was felt was helping her.
Well, then let's talk about that for a minute. Was she still in a wheelchair?
Don't comment on it at that particular time.
Did you think she had gotten out of the wheelchair?
No, sir.
Is your recollection she was still confined to a wheelchair?
That's my recollection.
And she's still non-functional? She can't walk.
You're okay. You're being generalized and saying
Okay.
non-functional.
Well, is she back in school?
She's still homeschooled.
Does she have pain in her upper as well as her lower extremities, or did you note that?
On that visit, I did not necessarily note that.
Did you note any complaints of lack of sensation or weakness at that point, other than recalling that she was still wheelchair bound?
No, nothing else is documented, sir.
So, at that point, well, let me back up. Did you note at that time any allodonia or dystonia with this patient?
The fact that I didn't comment at all on her neurologic exam means that she wasn't tolerating my touching her.
And by this point, can you just tell us how many medications she had gotten up to?
Well, you see it in my notes, sir. I'm sure you know the number.
To tell you the truth, I want to make sure of my count.
Sorry?
I want to make sure of my count.
All right, well, we can do that. And a lot of these are, there's some vitamin supplements in there. There's some what we call PRNs, which is as needed. So we can do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 19 or 20.
More.
Yeah.
Then you have a gap in your treatment of this patient between that date, April 1st, and August 11th of 2016. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You didn't see her at all between those two points, right?
That's correct, sir.
Were you aware she was getting hyperbaric oxygen therapy?
I was aware.
How were you aware of that?
Beyond had told me.
Is that something you recommend for CRPS?
Let's diverge for hyperbaric treatment, okay? Number one, I'm very comfortable with hyperbaric treatment because I used to work as an attendant and an operator for hyperbaric treatment when I was a medical student at UF, all right? So I'm familiar with the different applications of hyperbaric therapy. And so I was very comfortable with hyperbaric therapy. There had actually been a paper for CRPS utilizing hyperbaric treatment. So I understood the parents wanted to try something different, something to try and help her.
Were you aware of any recommendation that CRPS patients try hyperbaric therapy?
I know that they had found that through their investigations online.
Did you refer her for that?
No, sir.
While I'm on the subject, did you ever refer her for any psychological therapy?
It was my impression that she was under therapy at the time she needed it. At no point did I see that she was crashing and burning and wasn't already established with a counselor.
So back in the fall of 2015, if I can back up just a minute,
Okay.
when Dr. Kirkpatrick first saw her in September and October, you were never aware of any situation in which she was becoming suicidal or mentioned being suicidal?
It was never mentioned to me, sir.
All right. Did you ever see that in Dr. Kirkpatrick's record?
Objection, Your Honor, beyond scope.
Don't recollect that, sir.
All right. Let's go back to August of 2016. Was she, let me back up one more moment on the referral. Did you ever refer her for immunodeficiency?
No, sir. She was already seeing allergy immunologists.
You know who that was?
She saw several.
Did you see Dr. Menendez?
That was one of them.
Did you refer to him?
No, sir.
Did you ever see the report that he sent you?
Yes, sir.
You saw it just before your deposition was taken in this case, is that
No, I
right?
saw it at some point before that.
Well, did you ever call him and
No,
ask
sir.
about any of his impressions or the potential for Munchausen by proxy?
Objection.
I saw the note, sir, but I didn't.
Hold on a second, what's the legal basis?
It states facts, assumes it states facts not in evidence, the records are not in evidence.
Overruled.
Subject,
I saw the comment, but I did not believe it applied to Maya.
so you never talked to him about it?
No, sir.
And you saw that he did not diagnose an immunodeficiency?
I saw several other allergy notes that did document IG subclass deficiency in Maya. Okay, that I've seen laboratories, and I saw notes from, I think Dr. Tan was one, and there was perhaps another who did document her IG subclass deficiency.
Well, did you ever refer her to any of those doctors?
No, sir.
Did you ever talk to any of those doctors about how to proceed with her care?
About what, sir?
How to proceed with her care?
No, sir.
All right. So when you saw her in August of 2016, was she still wheelchair bound?
She's been doing pool therapy, and she was still in a wheelchair. Mm-hmm.
And she was still complaining of generalized pain, correct?
Correct.
And if I could ask for Joint Exhibit 1073, page 75, to be put up. Counsel asked you about your medical referral for homebound learning.
Yes, sir.
It was filled out at or about this time, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And let me ask you to look at it with me here. You answer yes. Let me scroll on down. You answer yes to the question of whether the student is suspected to be absent from school due to a physical or psychiatric condition or for at least 15 consecutive school days or 8 on a block schedule. You answered yes.
Yes, sir.
And then we skip down some, and it asks, that was a nice increase in size there. It asks at the bottom, is the student confined to home or hospital and full-time homebound or hospitalized? And you answered yes.
Yes, sir. I was trying to do what was in Maya's best interest.
Well, you believe that to be accurate, correct?
More or less.
Well, you weren't telling the school board a lie, were you?
No, sir.
And then said, do you recommend the student be placed in the most restrictive environment? And you said yes. Is that correct?
I wanted her to qualify for hospital homebound, sir, so that she could pursue her treatments and get her therapy.
you certified under yes, number 5, that is the student under medical care for illness or injury which is acute, catastrophic, or chronic in nature.
Chronic in nature.
So at that time, she had gained weight, correct?
Yes, sir.
When you were asked to comment on her weight at All Children's, did you compare her weights in the hospital or just those at admission and discharge?
No, sir. I didn't have the linear weights done in the hospital. I just had my records.
Okay, so you never saw the indication in the chart that she got up to close to 70 pounds at one point?
You're talking about controlled and uncontrolled circumstances. I don't know if they're using different scales. I don't know if they're weighing her clothes, what situation. In my office, we weigh her on the same scales in the same circumstance. So I put more trust in my weight than what's done in the hospital.
Yours are closed, correct?
Sorry, yes, sir.
But the answer is you never looked at how the hospital weight changed during the admission.
Yes, sir.
Incidentally, when you were seeing this patient, did you ever consider the diagnosis of a tethered spine?
No, sir.
Ever enter your mind?
No, sir.
You saw this patient after she was discharged from All Children's.
Yes, sir.
You told us what your impression of her condition was at that time.
Yes, sir.
First exam is January 18th of 2017, 10/66/17,
That's correct.
and she's up to 29.3 kilos, correct?
Yes, sir.
That's 4 days after her discharge?
Yes, sir.
And you've described your impression of what her condition was at that time. But it makes reference in your note to following up with psychology and physical therapy.
Yes, sir.
Did you talk to her psychologist or a physical therapist at that point?
Number one, we don't routinely contact the physical therapists. I mean, usually if they have an issue, they send us notes or requests. So
Did you
no, I
write
did
her a
not.
script?
Yes, sir.
You wrote her a script.
I don't know if she already had a script for physical therapy at that time or if we wrote it.
Do you
If
know
they
how many
requested
times-
one, I would have given one.
Sorry. Do you know how many times she went?
No, sir.
You didn't follow up on that at all?
No, sir.
Okay. And you didn't know who she was seeing for psychological therapy?
No, sir.
Now, if we fast forward here to the following fall, September of 2017,
Okay.
was she improving?
Yes, sir. I made the comment that she was doing markedly better and able to get out of her wheelchair.
Okay. And at that point, how long had it been since she had any ketamine?
Since prior to going into the hospital. Well, no, she got some in the hospital,
She
actually.
got some at the beginning of the
Yeah,
hospital?
Yeah.
And you
That
don't
would have
know
been
what-
October.
You don't know what dose that was,
No, I don't.
and you don't know how that dose compared to what she was getting from.
I know it was
Dr.
less than what she was getting from pain management, yes, sir.
Substantially less.
I don't know substantially, I know it was less because
Okay.
Beata was requesting more.
At the time you saw her in September of 2017, what analgesia was she getting, if any?
At that time, there's no prescription analgesics that I see on my records.
As a matter of fact, she's down to 3 medications on your record, is that right?
Correct?
And she's not taking clonidine or opiate or anything like that, correct?
That's correct.
And did she then continue to improve after that?
The next time I saw her was January 2018.
And she had made huge strides,
Mm-hmm.
is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And she kept improving from that point, is that right?
To a point.
To a point. And then she had a hospitalization in Orlando, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever talk to the doctors over there?
I talked to Dr. Bornstein.
Okay. And his impression was of an eating disorder?
No, sir. It was not.
What was it?
He distinctly did not make the diagnosis of an eating disorder, okay? And basically, his endoscopy showed limited gastritis, and he felt, my impression was that this was stress-induced and that she had limited this is a response to her stress at the time.
He didn't indicate to you that he thought there was a restrictive eating disorder secondary to stress and anxiety?
Restrictive eating disorder means that you're not taking in the calories, okay, and you're doing that because she was having abdominal complaints. That is not the typical eating disorder that I see in young females. The typical eating disorder I see in young females, they have disturbed body image. They think they look good. They don't see anything wrong with them, and they're extremely difficult to treat.
With bulimia and that sort?
That's one aspect of it, yes, sir.
And she's never had that?
No, sir.
All right. But she's continued to do well since then, after that?
She got better, fortunately.
Okay. And today, is she doing better still?
She's obviously under a lot of stressors. Stressors make everything worse. So I think the jury's out on it, no pun intended.
Well, she's been, what, 6 years without ketamine?
Yes, sir.
And you know of no plans for her to get more?
None has been discussed with me, sir. I don't see an indication for it at this point.
Talked about what went on when she was admitted to All Children's. Were you told about the court proceeding that was going on?
At some point, I was told that there was motions made to try and get visitation for the parents.
Did you offer to help with that?
I did.
Did you ever, after you talked to this resident that you spoke of, did you ever call All Children back?
No, I didn't.
You know the attending physicians there, you refer to them, correct?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever pick up the phone call?
I did not know any of the physicians that were on the service taking care of Maya. I had previous experience with the child protection team, which included Sally Smith.
I'm not asking
Okay.
about the child protection team.
All right.
I'm talking about the doctors at the hospital.
No, sir.
You refer up there, you know how to get in touch with the All Children's Hospital, right?
I do.
Your phone's got a dial pad, correct?
Correct.
Did you ever call them?
No.
Thank you.
Mr. Anderson.
Insofar as not being able to use ketamine, patients before anesthetics manage to get over their illnesses, don't they?
Yes, sir.
And the pain meds
are not designed, if I understand your testimony, to be a cure. They are to make things better.
Objection, leading your honor.
Overruled.
That's my understanding.
So whether or not Maya had ketamine and could get through that easier and faster, she had to go through this without ketamine and just grit it out.
Yes, sir.
Have we,
Hold on a second.
Leading compound, that's,
Sustained.
from what you saw, was it more difficult for Maya to try to stabilize and get better without the ketamine?
Without ketamine?
Yes. Was it, did she need the ketamine to get better quicker from what you saw?
It might have been helpful in that circumstance when she had the second presumed episode.
Meaning she had another episode, another relapse after she got out of Johns Hopkins?
Leading your honor.
Overruled.
That is my impression.
Now, getting to the number of meds, let's pull up what's been marked in evidence as 2002. I'll show you what is in your file, I believe. Well, actually, I know it is. And if we can go, is it the next one here with the number? All right. So this is the discharge summary from Johns Hopkins as of January 13th, 2017. So I want to go over what Johns Hopkins had her on or recommended. You see here where it says home medications and new prescriptions?
Yes, sir.
All right, so is Aquaphor a topic that can be used for skin lesions?
Yes, sir.
What is lansoprazole?
It's an acid blocker.
All right, next.
Got to scroll
Hang
the
on,
page.
can we?
Okay, here we go.
All right, so the next
Acetaminophen, pain reliever. Albuterol is a bronchodilator for asthma. Baclofen is a muscle relaxant. Cetirizine is an antihistamine.
Okay, and what's the,
Choline calciferol is vitamin D.
okay,
Ferrous sulfate is an iron supplement. Fluticasone is a nasal steroid. Oh, in that case, that was an inhaled steroid. The fluticasone nasal was a nasal steroid inhaled,
okay.
sprayed through your nose.
All right, and we have another one. This is the last page.
Neupiricin is a topical antibiotic. Polyethylene glycol is Miralax for constipation. Pregabalin is Lyrica, which is used in pain management. And multivitamins.
So, was Maya Kowalski discharged from Johns Hopkins with only 3 medications or with 13 or 14, depending on whether you see a vitamin as a medication?
On the list, there's 14.
And was she checked out with a pain med or medicines designed to combat her CRPS pain?
That was the pregabalin, which is Lyrica.
How about the baclofen?
Baclofen would also be used for that.
The following hospitals and doctors were cited on your cross-examination about why you didn't call them back. And there was Doctors Hospital, Venice Hospital, Tampa General, Lurie, and I think another doctor. To the best of your knowledge, none of those doctors were accusing the Kowalskis of Munchausen by proxy, were they?
objection.
Sustained.
That's to my knowledge, yes, sir.
Sir, the jury will disregard that answer.
To the best of your knowledge, there was no reason for you to need to call them back.
Correct.
And Beata Kowalski was, in fact, reporting back to you the next visit on what was going on.
Yes, sir.
Did she give a thorough history to you about the events in Maya's medical life, lack of a better term, since the last time you saw her?
She brought me up to speed on what was happening at that time.
Thus, was there any need for you to call physicians once you had the data from Beata Kowalski, the infusion nurse?
Objection, leading.
Overruled.
Beata was an extremely good historian, very knowledgeable medically, and they were very good about communicating to me what was happening with her and what the plans were and what they were hoping for.
And do you recall, as to the school homebound, whether that issue of whether she was going to go back to school in a wheelchair as opposed to staying in homebound at home, that were you aware that that was denied, that she was forced to go to school rather, in other words, that what you wrote down didn't work effectively?
I thought, number one, I knew she didn't want to go to school in a wheelchair, and I thought it was not in her best interest to go back to school and be stressed and upset when we've had this track record of having great difficulties when the stress levels go up. I was aware, which was the first time I've ever had them decline an application for hospital homebound. I still to this day don't know why they declined it, but I've never had that happen before.
And did it come to your attention that this emotional issue by Maya to having to go back to school, in fact, precipitated another relapse?
I know she was upset, yes, sir.
Nothing further, Your Honor.
Anything further? Defense? Members of the jury, do any of you have a question for Dr. Wassenaar? Can the attorneys come forward? Were there any other questions, or just the ones that were presented? Okay. Okay, Doctor, who made the note of Kyle appearing malnourished, and who had he been examined by to reach that opinion and notation of record?
Is this in reference to Kyle?
Kyle, yes.
I'm not sure who made that reference.
Thank you. The next question from the jury: is it common for doctors to collaborate with other doctors about their patients' care?
In a perfect world, It would be very nice. It is easier when you are part of the same system, such as my current group. We have we have a wide spectrum of specialists. We share the same medical record. So communication there is much easier because we can look on there and tell what's been done, what's been ordered. We can see the labs. Unfortunately, in the real world, when we are utilizing outside specialists and outside physicians and tests, it is very difficult for us to we don't always get comprehensive records. There is problems with communication sometimes, and it is, we can request records. I'd say half the time we get it, half the time we don't. So if there is when we communicate currently most often directly is usually when I'm trying to get someone seen on an urgent basis to address a medical problem, because the current logistics, it'll take way too long for them to get in there and be seen by the specialist. So the most common scenario in which I pick up the phone and call someone is when I'm trying to get somebody seen urgently for an urgent medical condition.
Plaintiffs, any follow-up questions?
No, Your Honor.
Jurors, any follow-up questions? Okay, and may Dr. Wassenaar be excused?
Yes, Your Honor, please.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Wassenaar, for being here.
Thank you very much.
Judge, we're not sure we're going to release him yet, but he may be.
Okay, so to the extent you're under a subpoena, it's possible you might have to be called back.
Today or another day or what?
Another day.
Okay.
I'm assuming it's another day.
Probably not, but.
Okay, no, that's fine. I'm just want to know whether they hang around or not.
No, you don't need to hang around today.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm looking for timing based on the witnesses you have this afternoon. Is there a short witness or?
I mean, relatively, our next witness would probably be 20 to 30 minutes on direct, and I'm gonna guess 5 to 10 on cross, but.
Given the other witnesses you have this afternoon, should we take a lunch now or?
I'll leave that to the jury.
I'm asking you, given the scheduling that you have.
All of our witnesses are here and can be here for the duration of the day.
Are you all okay to go another, sounds like 30 minutes, or do you want to take a lunch now? Okay, I'm hearing, let's call your next witness.
All right, plaintiff's call Linda Brown.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm testimony about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
Yes, ma'am. So you're gonna go walk around and have a seat on that witness stand?
Good morning, just barely. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Linda Suzanne Martin, hyphenated Brown.
And you and I have spoken on a couple of occasions, but we've never met in person, have we?
Not till today, sir.
Have you been called here to testify as a member of Epiphany Church?
Not really
Are
sure.
you a member of Epiphany
Yes,
Church?
I am.
Are you also a member of the Legion of Mary?
I am.
And on occasion in 2015 and 2016, did you come to know the Kowalski family a little bit?
Through Sister Francis, yes.
Just briefly, would you give the jury background in terms of how long you've been a resident in Venice and how long you've been a member of the church?
I've been in Venice since 1997. I've been a member of the church pretty much since then because I had my daughter in 98, so we became members full time when we had her.
And the Legion of Mary, would you explain for the jury what the Legion of Mary is?
There's two groups for the Legion of Mary. The first group is the main group that meets every week. They have meetings and discussions about places to go and people to see, to help and pray for whatever their needs might be. They also have what they call a traveling Mary or a pilgrim Mary. She's about 3 feet tall, and she comes in a big kind of black box, almost looks like a golf club kind of bag, but it's all square. You know, it's long and rectangular. And she comes in the box, and she has a beautiful crown that we put on her head, and there's a ceremony that goes with it, with a book that's inside of this box, all contained with Mary. We put rosaries around her neck, and then we pray with the family. We engage them with certain prayers that are in this book to leave the Mary with them so that they continue to do the rosary with this pilgrim Mary who's present in their home. And she's there for healing and hope and health, and gives a lot of us Catholics a whole lot of hope.
You happen to live in Stonewalk, which is the Kowalski's neighborhood, right?
It is.
And did there come a time in 2015 when you learned that Maya had a pain condition of some sort?
Was it 2015? Gosh, it was that long ago. From Sister Francis, I was at church with Sister Francis. I used to went to daily mass when they had it then. And excuse me, I don't mean to go on.
You're doing fine.
Yes, I just need to breathe. Sister Francis was speaking to someone about saying prayers for the Kowalskis. And she saw me and said, "They live in your neighborhood." And I said, "Oh, I will bring them the traveling Mary," because Sister Francis was telling me that their daughter was ill, and my heart went out to her, so I wanted to bring Mary there so that they all could pray for the healing of their daughter.
And so did you take the Mother Mary to the Kowalski's house?
I did. That was the first time I met Beata. And I went into the home, and her sister was there from Chicago. I did not see Maya at the time. And the husband was there as well, and they were getting ready to go somewhere for some function. So normally when you come into the house with this traveling Mary, you do the whole ceremony with the family and you set her up.
Ma'am, while we wait for the next question, okay?
All right. So you went to the home, you met Beata, you met Jack, Maya, you didn't see her. You brought in the Mother Mary. You explained a little bit, but what is the normal process that you go through with a family when you unbox her and set her up?
We unbox her and put her in a prominent place, and then we put the crown on her head and the rosaries around her neck, and we say the prayers that are in this particular book that comes with. And the family gets books as well, so that they can all look at the prayers so they can say them together.
And on that occasion, you already mentioned that the Kowalski family was on their way out or something, so did you go through the ceremony with them at their house, or did you leave Mother Mary and trust that they would do that?
I left Mary with them to trust that they would do that.
And then, how long does Mother Mary typically stay in a family's home or a sick parishioner's home after you deliver her?
A week, or if, you know, she's not in need for someone else, if they need her longer, it can be extended. So it's, the duration is, you know, who needs her next and who's waiting for her, or who needs her the most at the moment.
Did Beata and Jack appear appreciative that you were there with the Mother Mary?
Oh, yes, absolutely.
And after a week, did you pick Mother Mary up or someone else?
No, sir.
Meaning someone else picked her up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so that was in 2015, and then fast forward a little bit, sometime in 2016, you saw Maya during the 4th of July parade, is that right?
That is correct.
Can you tell us a little bit about your interaction with the Kowalskis on the 4th of July 2016?
Well, it was our whole neighborhood, and it was the Kowalski family and a family across the street, and we intertwined, and there was a big, huge slide, and my immediate thing I first went to do was to go see Maya, and I did. She was in her wheelchair, and I gave her a big hug, and I thought she looked so well, I thought that she could just get up out of the wheelchair any day. And I gave her a stick of huckleberry chapstick, and gave her a big hug, and just continued to be at the party. And
so typical 4th of July in your neighborhood with the parade, and you saw Maya that day, is that right?
I did.
And then, is it true that the next time you interacted with the Kowalski family was when you got a phone call from Beata?
That is correct.
What was Beata's mental and emotional state at that point?
She was absolutely distraught.
Could you understand what she was telling you on the phone?
No, I could not, which is why I went over there to speak with her, so I could try to understand what she was saying to me.
And what did you learn when you got to the Kowalski home that day?
That Maya had been taken away from Beata.
And so you resolved to do what you do and deliver the Mother Mary?
Joyce and I were bringing the Traveling Mary to Maya.
Let me ask the question.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
It's okay. You show up at the Kowalski home, Beata's distraught. What did you decide to do to help Maya?
I went over to see Beata because she couldn't speak over the phone, and I didn't know what was wrong. And when I got there, she was crying and, you know, snots everywhere and just so upset. And I kept saying, she kept saying that they took her, and I'm like, who took her? And she said the hospital took her, and I didn't understand any of that.
It's a legal basis. Is there an exception, Mr. Marchant?
Excited utterance, then existing mental state.
Overrule the objection. You can finish your answer.
You were saying the hospital took her, you can continue.
And I didn't understand what she was talking about at all. I didn't understand that. So I was just sitting there with her to just, you know, help her breathe. And then Jack came home, and I left to let the two of them be together.
In the next couple of days or the following week, did you decide to then deliver Mother Mary to Maya?
Yes, we decided that we would go, we would bring her to the Traveling Mary to the hospital that Maya was in.
Your Honor, I'm sorry. Your correct.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. So we were beginning to discuss your decision to take the Mother Mary to Maya. And you said we. Who's we?
Joyce Sacco and myself.
And who is Joyce Sacco? Is she another member of the Legion of Mary?
She is a member of the Legion of Mary.
All right, so you knew at that point that Maya was at Johns Hopkins All Children's Hospital, and you made a drive up there. Can you describe a little bit the drive up there?
I drove with Joyce in her vehicle, and we just prayed the entire way. We didn't discuss anything because we didn't know anything other than we were praying to help a little girl who was sick. That's all we knew.
And you arrive at the hospital, and you get up to Maya's room, and if you could describe the scene as you enter Maya's room.
I went in her room, and she was sitting there crisscross applesauce, and I went over to her, and she reached up to me, and I hugged her, and then we were...
And what happened next?
Just like darkness was there, and we were told to get out of the room. We weren't supposed to be in there. We I wasn't supposed to be touching Maya, and that what were we bringing? What was that? We tried to explain that it was the miraculous Mother Mary, and that we were bringing her to be with Maya so that she could pray, and they said that was not allowed and that we had to go. So we left the room.
And who's they? Nurses or doctors?
Just whatever that dark force was behind me. I didn't really... It just was dark. That's the only way I can explain it.
And it was explained to them. You mentioned this is the Mother Mary. She's here to pray with Maya. Is that right?
That Maya would pray with her, yes.
And so, did they give you any reason that you couldn't be there with her?
They did not, no, sir.
But they kicked you out of the room immediately?
Yes, sir.
Where did you go?
To the chapel.
What did you do in the chapel?
Prayed.
And where was the chapel?
Downstairs in the hospital.
And were you praying for Maya?
Yes.
I missed something. Were you allowed to leave the Mother Mary with her in the room there?
No, sir, I was not.
You weren't allowed to leave the rosary beads that would go with
No,
Mother
sir.
Mary? And you weren't allowed to leave the prayer book?
No, sir.
And you went down to the chapel and prayed afterwards?
Yes, sir.
How long did you stay there?
An hour at least. Maybe more, because other people came in and saw us in there, and they had sick children, and they asked us what we were doing, and we said we were praying, and they came in and prayed with us for their children as well. So it was a whole group of us praying for sick children.
At some point before this incident at the hospital, had you given Maya a rosary or a medal or something like that?
I've probably given them... I pass out miraculous medals, which I carry with me. Where are they? There you are. And she's a miraculous medal, and it has Mary on there, and it's on a chain, so you can wear it. And then there's a card that shows you the miraculous medal. It's a miracle that happened, and it explains, if I may, it's just real short. Okay.
I'm not sure what the question is at this point.
Let's wait for a question.
It's given to people for...
Pam, let's put it down. Let's wait for a question.
All right. Is this something that you've given Maya in the past?
Yes.
Have you seen Maya recently?
Yes.
Does she still have it?
I'm not aware of that, but I can tell you what she said to me when I gave her a hug.
Please.
Objection, hearsay.
How did you know when you were in the room there that you couldn't leave the Mother Mary statue?
We were told that we had to leave the room and take whatever was in the box out.
I heard your earlier testimony that no reason was given. Did they ever present you with some sort of list of who was allegedly allowed or not allowed in the hospital to see Maya?
No, sir.
the witness.
Ms. Cross?
Thank you. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
I love your hat.
Thank you.
I just have a couple questions for you. Before, well, first of all, you, as you said, you live in the neighborhood, same neighborhood as the
Yes.
Kowalskis, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you talked about the first time you went to the house and you brought Mary, but they had company or they were leaving, so you did not stay and do the whole ritual, correct?
Correct.
All right. And then you had the second time when you went, because Mrs. Kowalski had called you and you went there and she was very upset.
Correct.
All right. And almost incoherent.
I'm sorry?
Almost incoherent.
Yes. I mean, you know, she got it out, but I had to physically be there with her.
Right, understand. And it was after that visit that you went to the hospital, correct?
Correct.
All right. And when you went to the hospital, you don't recall checking in with security
No, ma'am.
or getting a name tag?
No, ma'am.
Right. And is it fair to say that you were unaware as to whether or not DCF, the Department of Children and Family Services, was requiring background checks for anybody who would be visiting Maya?
Objection.
Legal basis.
Facts, not evidence.
Overruled. You can answer.
That's
Could
not
you
something
repeat
you
the
were
question?
aware of, correct?
I was not aware of any of those facts, ma'am, no.
Right. You had no knowledge as to what restrictions there were or were not with respect to visitors for Maya, correct?
Correct.
All right. Now, you would certainly understand that, well, I'll strike that. When you went to the hospital room, you were only in there briefly, correct?
Seconds.
Seconds. And you indicated that you saw Maya and she was sitting crisscross applesauce on the bed.
Mm-hmm.
She seemed happy to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Yes?
Yes,
Okay. You gave her a big hug.
I did.
She hugged you back.
Yes.
That's right. And then you were told that you had to leave, correct?
Correct.
All right. And you said that there was some dark force. You're not talking about the room was dark. You felt some sort of
Yeah, it was like the
dark
devil was
energy.
behind me. We were the light coming in and there was the devil behind me. It's what it was. It was dark. It was the devil.
And then you saw Maya in the Easter of 2020. You recall seeing her then?
That was during COVID, if I may ask the question. It's all those years sort of.
Yes, I'm just going by your deposition testimony you previously said. Do
Can you
recall seeing her
refresh
at
my
Easter?
memory?
Do you recall
I
seeing
do.
her at Easter?
Yes.
Okay. And your description was that she was walking like a beautiful, thriving young teenager when you saw her, correct?
Yes.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Whitney?
Did any of the nurses that entered the room tell you to go downstairs to get a badge? You missed the security desk or something like that?
No, sir.
Did any of them mention to you that these DCF background checks were being done on supervisors, but not just plain visitors?
No, sir.
Were you there as a spy, or were you there to give Maya hope?
I was there to give Maya hope.
Overruled.
Were you there as a spy,
No,
or you were
sir.
there to give Maya hope?
I was there to give Maya hope.
Nothing further, thank you.
Ms. Crowell, anything further?
No.
Members of the jury, do any of you have a question? Attorneys, please come forward.
Ms. Brown?
Yes.
Question from the jury is, did the Dark Force people say they could not pray with Maya?
Yes.
Any follow-up, Mr. Whitney?
No, Your Honor.
Ms. Crowells?
Yes. Ma'am, isn't it that you were there for a few seconds, they came in and they told you that you had to leave, that you could not be there, correct?
Joyce was explaining to them that we were there to pray, and they said we could not do that.
They said you could not stay, correct?
We could not pray or stay.
Thank you.
Members of the jury, are there any other questions? May this witness be excused?
Yes, Your Honor.
Oh, yes, sir.
Hey, Ms. Brown, you're free to go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members of the jury, I'm going to go ahead and let you go for lunch here in a couple of moments. And Debbie Coley, I'm going to want them back, ready to go. Let's call it at 1:30, so it's a little bit shorter than an hour and a half today, okay? Do not discuss this case amongst yourselves. Do not do any investigation and receive no information. Okay?
All
You're
right,
free to
Jurors exited.
go have a good lunch. Okay, the jury is out of our presence. Everyone feel free to sit. Are there any issues we need to